So today we are talking about exorcisms. An exorcism, as we are talking about it, is merely the concept that some people believe where a person's body becomes taken over by some sort of unwanted spirit. The exorcism is the process through which that person believes that the spirit will be removed. Okay, so that is the belief there. The reason I say spirit and not specifically demon is because there are different beliefs around the world. There are different exorcisms. Exorcisms are often associated with Christianity, particularly Catholicism, but they are found in other cultures as well. Here in Korea they have shamanistic exorcisms. So those are not something that would necessarily be, your Abrahamic demon concept. And we should also know that possession itself is not always considered a negative thing. So there are voodoo type religions, for example. The possession is called a mounting by the deities, the Loa. And so that's how you communicate with the spirits. And so the possession is a wanted and almost necessary part of worship. And so you would not want to have an exorcism there. So that's why I kind of set it up in sort of a general term, but also to let people know that there are cases where people believe that a spirit has inhabited their body by choice. So they want that to happen. Yeah. Let's see, I would recommend seeing The Exorcist and listening to the director's commentary track if you can. Yeah, I think it's on Netflix now, so I think I'll check it out perhaps after we do finish up here. I do know that it was based on an exorcism from the 1940s, and that the idea wasn't so much to make it like this big sensational thing, but rather to show audiences the triumph of Jesus over Satan. So I think that was the original intention of that. There's also The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is supposedly based on a true story. That one I have seen. I saw that back when I was religious, and then also when I was not religious. It feels different. Now, I do still really like religious type movies, even though I'm no longer religious. I do like those kinds of themes. I like to see what people do with them. Constantine is one of my favorite movies. It's one of those movies where you don't know what to watch, but you want to watch something, so I just kind of turn on Constantine or The Exorcism of Emily Rose. So I like to have those just on. They're kind of fun. The Craft was up there as well, but they took that off of Netflix, unfortunately. Let's see. As an atheist, you found it completely unrealistic, and I think that's, let's see, Max says that's good because movies like that make people paranoid, but in all honesty, COVID and cancer are bigger threats to us than exorcism as of now. Right, and so Max, since you said you are new, so I am actually at an increased risk for cancer because of where I was stationed when I was in the Marines. And so this is not... Definitely hit the nail. You chose the right one there. Cancer is definitely a big threat to those of us, and to myself in particular as well. COVID as well, I thankfully haven't had that, but there are some things that I've been avoiding during this pandemic because I just don't want to put myself at risk if I don't have to. So I've got some broken teeth, chipped teeth, we're missing fillings, and I'm just a bit nervous about going to the dentist right now. So as long as there's no blood or pain, I think I'm just gonna deal with it until we get there. And then I also have Schrodinger's virus. We're not really sure what it is. We know there's something, but until I have a fever or I'm underweight from the vomiting, just not gonna go back to the doctor. So not great. I believe Exorcism, the movie, was based on a boy. They took a lot of liberties in the movie. I think that's what we also have to remember. When we look at something that is based on a true story, that means the story had inspired the movie to some degree. It does not mean this is a documentary. So I know there's a scene in The Exorcist where the girl's head spins around. Probably not something that was seen during the exorcism itself. I'm also not sure what tools were used in the exorcism, but I know for Catholic exorcisms, a standard tool is a voice recorder. So this would not necessarily have captured visuals, especially since this was done in the 1940s. It's going to be a bit more expensive. I know the Catholic Church can probably afford things as a church, but perhaps the local diocese might not have easy access to video cameras at that time to provide for individual exorcisms. So the voice recorder, that was definitely a tool that has been used in exorcisms for quite some time. And it's very helpful, to hear what's going on. But as far as like providing a visual, that was probably absent. Again, I haven't seen it. I haven't done too much research into that movie, so I might be wrong. But when we're talking about a lot of the visual stuff, there was also the unfortunate death of a German girl named Annalisa, and that was another voice recorded exorcism. And there were accompanying photos after she had passed, and it had reminded me of that courtroom scene in The Exorcism of Emily Rose, where they had put on display this was Emily before the exorcism and then after the exorcism. This was her on the day of her death or something, and the photo that they used reminded me a lot of the Annalisa photos. Yeah. Let's see. I'm very sorry to hear that. I did watch your channel before, which I also thought had amazing content. Yeah, so we just sort of revamped it for a couple reasons. If you want to join us on Discord, we can kind of go through that as well. But it's sort of relaunched as a more teacher-student kind of setup, I guess. Just kind of fun. And also we're doing a lot of live streams. It seems like a lot of people are interested in them. I also like to have that questions interaction, so it's pretty good time. Permission to use Schrodinger's virus is my new band name. Absolutely, that's totally fine. The reason I nicknamed it that is because we know it's a virus because there were certain, like my lymph nodes have swollen up all in my neck, and I've been vomiting and so forth, so that appears to be viral, but there's no fever, and my white blood cell count is normal, so that seems to indicate an absence of a virus, and the idea was to send me to a virologist, but the COVID case had gone up in between that week, and I just decided I didn't want to risk it. If the doctors weren't too worried about it, we had to rule out, is it lymphoma? Once we ruled that out, they said, okay, we can get you help with that, but they weren't ambivalent. They weren't ambivalent to it. It was just, there's people suffering from COVID. You know what I mean? This is somebody coming in with something that's not COVID, not immediately dangerous. It's not that it's not important. It's just there's pressing matters to tend to, and for me to keep putting myself at risk of exposure by being in a hospital, I just didn't think it was warranted if the doctors were not worried about it. Yeah. Let's see. Joe uploaded a new video about how COVID vaccines teach us how to make cancer vaccines. Pretty cool stuff. I would say that is pretty cool. One of the difficult things about cancer is there's so many types, so that's one of the issue. Schrodinger even has the rock dots. Yes. It's an awesome band name. Yes. The lovely umlauts. All right. So did anybody have any experience other than watching movies about exorcisms? Does anyone have any experience with exorcisms? I know that's kind of a big jump. Your experience could be either direct, you were the exorcisee, or you were the exorciser, or did you have any kind of did you witness an exorcism personally? Did you hear about it, such as a family member or friend saying, oh yeah, I saw an exorcism, or I had an exorcism, or I performed an exorcism? No experience, Protestant country, we don't do exorcisms. Now, I did want to touch on that, so I'm glad you brought that up, Ratza. Not personally, okay? I have a lack thereof. Okay. So I guess this is where the fun begins, because I do have personal experience with exorcisms. So this will be kind of interesting. But I did want to talk about Ratz's comment about being in a Protestant country. So around the turn of the 20th century, so going from the 1800s into the 1900s, in the United States, spiritualism had really exploded, but so did a lot of different sects of Christianity. This is when we get the predecessors to Jehovah's Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists. The Mormons were a bit earlier. They're middle-ish 1800s. But this is also when we get like the concept of seances. Maybe you've heard of the Fox sisters that had performed a bunch of seances that they later had said on their deathbeds, this was just a hoax. So this is, let's see, not personally, but I did see some videos. In your case, they saved the demon from you. Yeah, that's a great joke there. Thanks, Ratza. Save the demon from my, skepticism? I'm not sure. So these different sects had created a lot of different concepts, these updated concepts of how to interpret Protestant Christianity. And we get that evangelical movement out of it, which is a very fundamentalist Christian movement. It's about 30%, last I heard, of the US, but you know what, why don't we just check that, because I heard that, I never verified it. Which percentage of the US is evangelical? Let's find out. Gosh, yeah, 30 to 35% of the US is evangelical. Okay, so what is evangelical Christianity? How can you see what it is? These are the, big tent revival kinds of Christians. These are the big, loud music. Let's get into that kind of Christianity. When we're talking about the televangelists, those are evangelical televangelists. So these are that big, showy, the mega churches, the super churches, that kind of thing, where I would say it's not just a religion, it's a lifestyle. It's not just lifestyle, it's a performative lifestyle. And of those, we have different sects, or in some cases, I guess if you use the BITE model, the Stephen Hassan's BITE model, you would end up with these as actual cults. Again, we're not using cult as like a pejorative. We're just talking about a descriptor. So it's a type of belief system that is, it's got its own, some of its own special phrases. There's the, what else? I mean, there's a lot of them, but I'm just trying to think of what counted in the case of like Pentecostal Christianity. There's love bombing, there's thought stopping techniques, there's attempts to control different aspects of your life, there's a type of shunning that happens, and so on and so forth. So there's some things that would qualify it as a cult. Let's see what you guys have to say before we go on. My mother put salt around my bed. Does that count? She was convinced that I was possessed by the devil because I was a child but never smiled. Always been too serious for my own good, she says. I come from a very religious background. I would say that would be along those same lines, yeah. What sparked the start of Jehovah's Witnesses? I just got here. I would recommend so I don't have, I was never Jehovah's Witnesses, or Jehovah's Witness, or a witness. So I would recommend checking out Telltale, so that you can just type in to YouTube search bar, just Telltale Jehovah's Witness, or Telltale History of Jehovah's Witness. So he is an ex-Jehovah's Witness who got out, does a lot of really good videos. And so I would recommend his channel. But basically there was Bible math. I forget the predecessor group specifically. I want to say they were it was like the predecessors to the Davidians as well, or a group like early Davidians. So not the branch Davidians, but like an early Davidians. they had predicted the end of the world. And they had predicted it to be around like the 1800s or so, and then eventually that had changed, and so they were doing a lot of this Bible math, which is sort of based on like numerology basically, but with the Bible. Once the groups had noticed that the year had come and gone with no type of revelation, the group had split. And so the split had been for people that, well, maybe we got the math wrong, let's try again. And then there was another group of maybe we had the math right, but Jesus came back in a way that wasn't super obvious. And so now we are in the end times, but Armageddon itself has not yet started. And so that group, I believe the second one was the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so they're very close to believing that Armageddon is going to happen anytime. And so when Telltale talks about this, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand. We had that belief too, that the end of the world is coming anytime. Anytime there was talk of like any updates with banking or anything, this was the mark of the beast. They're going to force you to get a chip implanted in your hand or on your forehead so they can scan it. Don't take that. So sometimes we would stockpile canned food, so that way we would be prepared, not for the Armageddon, because the belief was that we would be raptured up to heaven, so we wouldn't have to deal with that. But this was like between the mark of the beast period and the rapture. How are we supposed to afford food? And so there was like a food that we would have in this other pantry that we weren't supposed to eat. And then when it got close to expiring, we had to eat it, and then we had to go get more. So that was just kind of just ready for it, anytime. Now I had an issue with that because when we would read something, like read a passage from the Bible in church, I would keep reading it. And so it was, the pastor would go off on a sermon and stuff, and I thought, well, isn't God's word more important than the pastor's interpretation or the pastor's word? And I always thought it was weird how they would pick a couple verses and then have like this hour-long sermon just because of a couple verses. And I thought, well, maybe it's better just to read the verse or to read the chapter. So I would just be reading instead. And I had found out that when they're talking about the end times, it talks about coming as a thief in the night, so on and so forth. But then there was some discussion about that. Why would it talk about Jesus as a thief and so forth? But then it said no one knows when that time is. Not even the Son, only the Father. And yet our pastors were saying things like, I don't know when it's coming, but I feel like it's going to be in this generation. I feel like it's happening anytime soon. And I thought that was a bit odd, that the Bible would say nobody knows when this is happening. Not even Jesus knows when the end times are coming, and yet my pastor thinks that he knows when it's going to happen vaguely. So I always thought that was a bit odd, so I didn't really like that practice, even as a Christian who totally believed this stuff. I wasn't like some of you where I was raised religious, but wasn't religious. I was incredibly in that concept. I totally believed it. I wanted to be a pastor or some kind of missionary, just in the ministry field. It's why I began to study the Bible. So for me, I totally believed it. I just had different beliefs about it from some of my family. Now, I would say evangelical Pentecostal, still definitely within that type of fundamentalist, extreme kind of belief. But I just had some different beliefs about it. So that was interesting. No, I wasn't skeptical then. Ackles says, glad to hear you were skeptical then. I wasn't skeptical then. I thought I was following the Bible better. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that my pastors are saying this stuff that I don't believe, therefore I'm going to start questioning the veracity of the religion. Not at all. It was, well, the Bible says this and my pastor's saying this, so clearly my pastor is just kind of wrong, because obviously the Bible is totally right. So that was the thing. It was like I wanted to be as biblical as possible. My pastor was saying something against the Bible. I got to confront my pastor about this, because how could he say that? And I did. I confronted my youth pastor about it, not, publicly, like in the middle of a sermon or anything, but afterwards I said, Pastor so-and-so, I just want to know, how can you say that you feel like it's going to happen? Because doesn't the Bible say that only Jesus, or only God the Father, Yahweh, knows this? And the pastors would always give me this answer that never really satisfied me. It was just like, well, I'm not saying I know exactly when it's going to come. That's what the others say. The Jehovah's Witnesses say that and stuff. They say that they know the exact date and they're going to predict it, and they're always wrong, and there's a reason for that. I'm not saying that, but I am saying, I feel like it's more likely than not. And that still bothered me. I was like, how can you say it's more likely? How can you get a feeling if the Bible says even Jesus doesn't have a feeling? Like, what made you, and so I didn't want to argue, because that's the thing. If you try to bring it up, you don't understand it the right way. You're just a teenager. You don't get it. We have to pray for you and make sure you're not demon possessed and all this other stuff, which brings us back to our exorcisms. Well, let's go ahead and see what you guys are writing here. I find the pig demon story in the Gospels to be unbelievable. Closest I've been to an exorcism is arguing that the story is reasonable with the fundamentalist. Interesting. Being raised as one, it'd be interesting to hear what was said. If you could please repeat that. Oh, are you talking about you were a Jehovah's Witness? Yeah, stockpiles of canned foods. Right. And I think the witnesses have their own things to buy. Like, there's a website to buy kits, I think, for that. I watched a news on TV that a pastor beat up the possessed to death. Yes, and we'll talk about that kind of concept as well. Hello, Chris. I had a similar story that led to deconversion. I read the Bible in its entirety from, I'm assuming you mean ages 11 to 15, and I was disturbed how often preachers got it wrong. I also thought that I was following it better. Right. And that's kind of where I guess the early seeds of questioning religious authority, not questioning the religion, but religious authority. That's where that would have started. It's just my own reading of the Bible. So I just felt like they didn't, yeah. Would you say you were skeptical of the pastor? I think that when we say skeptical, I feel like a skeptical person is skeptical across the board. So they're skeptical in a lot of ways. I don't mean overly skeptical. I don't mean like that I'm not going to understand something until I personally see it perform, like not like that. But I do mean that a person who is as skeptical of other religions as they are of their own. And I feel like I was a skeptic, like a baby skeptic or a starter skeptic. I was very skeptical and good at finding, but I was going to say finding the problems with other sects and other religions, but at the same time, I think everybody is, right? Most people, like there's this saying that if you want to find out what's wrong with Islam, ask a Christian. And if you want to find out what's wrong with Judaism, ask a Muslim. And if you want to find out what's wrong with Christianity, ask a Jew. And so that's sort of this idea that everybody's good at finding the problems in other religions, but not their own. But I would say that I had no problem questioning authority. That wasn't really an issue for me as a kid. Of course I was a child. I did what adults told me to do. I followed the rules because I was afraid of the repercussions. But I definitely argued with them along the way. Well, this isn't fair because whatever. Well, you said this before, but now you're doing this thing. So that was, yeah, I remember, being told as a child, don't smoke cigarettes. And then my parents were smokers at the time. They've since quit, which is good for them. But I had taken like a carton of cigarettes and I threw it in the trash, like in the outdoors, like the outside trash. And then I had to go retrieve it because I did not want to get my butt beat red. But but yeah, it was like, well, you said that you're not going to do this, and how come you're doing it, and how come blah, blah, blah. And so we got the do as I say, but not as I do concept, which never made sense to me as a kid. It makes more sense to me as an adult, but never made sense to me as a kid. But yeah, I was very argumentative with adults if things didn't make sense. I wasn't just contrarian for the sake of it. I think I was a little bit when I was, a teenager, just trying to be a little edgelord, I guess. But yeah, for the most part, if something didn't make sense to me, I just said it. I really didn't have that, well, an adult told me, so it must be true. The only thing really about that was religion, but even then, I mostly kept quiet because I didn't want it to turn into an argument. Because eventually you'd go back and forth. Well, here's a question and then a response. Well, it doesn't make sense because of this. And then another response. Well, that doesn't make sense to me because of this. And God works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways was the conversation ender. If you try to continue it, it was like I would be ignored and exorcised, like mild exorcised. It was, hands were put on me while I'm trying to make this argument, like, well, I don't understand this because blah, blah, blah. And I was just totally ignored. Hands were placed on my shoulders or my head and praying out the demons of argumentation, the demons of confusion, the demons of faithlessness and all that stuff. And so it was just like, okay, great. So am I demon possessed? Is that what this is? I questioned that, am I actually demon possessed? And so that was, and even if you were, even if you decided you weren't, you still don't want other people to think that about you, which we'll also talk about for the exorcism as well. Yeah, like Leah Remini with Scientology, absolutely. Except he's saying the same thing Jehovah's Witnesses say, even down to the word. I know we aren't supposed to speculate, but I feel like it's coming in this generation. The only difference was that we believed that Jesus knew along with God. That's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot of overlap in these sects. I think some of the key words or the special words are a little different, like how Jehovah's Witnesses call themselves witnesses more than they would say Christians, I think. We were true believers. We had this one I get a lot too. It's, well, the problem that you had is that you were following a religion, but really it's not a religion. It's supposed to be a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what we said too. What religion are you? Or you have such a, you're so religious. Whoa, buddy. I'm not religious. I just have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Like, that was our phrase. Pledge the hedge of protection and plead the blood of Jesus. That was a phrase we always used in our prayers. And so if you hear that, that's something. Another one is to be slain in the spirit, and I think that should be its own separate video as well. But yeah, to be slain in the spirit was definitely one. Oh, thanks, Ackle. Yeah, click the like button. Helps with my channel. It sure does. All right, so let's go ahead and get back to the exorcism concept. So for me, as a Pentecostal Christian, so that is the smaller sect, or the more, I would say more, I don't know, extreme sect of evangelical. I would say it's even more, it's like evangelical times 2, or evangelical to like the second power, the third power, if we want to make it Trinitarian. So this was, sort of an amped up version. And for us, literally everything was God or Satan, angels or demons. Catholic exorcisms are very different from Pentecostal exorcisms. Especially these days, Catholic people are, I would say, because there's so much scrutiny on them. Sorry, I got a bit of, I don't know why my nose has been running a little extra these days. So because there's so much scrutiny on the Catholic Church, there's so many eyes on the Catholic Church, they are very careful on how to label something truly a demonic possession that is requiring of an exorcism. And you may have seen something about that. I think what are they called? It starts with an I. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It's like a movie series about a husband and wife Catholic team in the 70s that had done these like not sanctioned exorcisms. Gosh, I forget what Insidious, I think it is. But there's one, I think it's Insidious 2, where there's that weird like scary nun kind of figure. One of the priests calls them in because the priest believes that it requires an exorcism, or they try to get the priest to do the exorcism, and the priest says, I can't. So they do the exorcism instead on their own. The priest is like, we can't officially sanction this. It doesn't meet the criteria. And that's kind of what they're talking about. If you check out stuff about Catholic exorcisms, most of the like archbishops or dioceses, they're like the local kind of regional leaders of the Catholic Church. They'll say things like, I don't know of any genuine demonic possession that's happened in my memory or in my lifetime. They'll say those phrases because they're very careful about it. They do show up, of course, to evaluate these things, but it's more like, this is a child that's acting out, this is a person that's having some kind of mental issue, or, I think you should get this person into a doctor's office, have them, undergo an MRI. Oh, it looks like it's some kind of mental, like a brain problem. Okay, we got that solved, not demonic possession, adios. And that's kind of how they approach it. If they believe it is a genuine demonic possession, they have these quiet exorcisms. So that's sort of the idea, is that a hidden sort of exorcism. It's they don't want a lot of eyes on it. It's not to do anything bad or wrong. It's just they don't want to make it sensationalized, because it's been so sensationalized. So there's a lot of scrutiny on them for that reason. They say that nothing magical happens. It's just a lot of prayer, and then the person using their faith to get out of this demonic possession, and that's it. Pentecostals, on the other hand, they are very big about it. So I wanted to go ahead and show you guys a video, but let me see what you guys are saying first. Let's see. Isn't speaking in tongues an indication of demonic possession in a few branches of Christianity, but obviously not Pentecostal? Yeah. No. So speaking in tongues is a prayer language, and that's in the Bible. I think it's in Acts, but I have to refresh myself. The type of thing you're talking about is speaking of languages that we don't expect the person to have an understanding of, and those languages are a language. So speaking in tongues, that's usually believed to be a spirit language. It will sound like babbling, but really it's the language of the Holy Spirit. That's kind of how we phrased it. So we didn't believe that there was any language aspect to it. There were cases that we were told about that later on, when I tried to verify it, I just couldn't find any actual verification. But there were cases that I was told about where a missionary would go to a place and try to preach the gospel, and then they found out that this local tribe didn't know English, but they also didn't know Arabic. Like, the person learned Arabic to teach them, but they knew like Aramaic or something. And so when the missionary started praying, they were slain in the spirit and started to speak in tongues, and that happened to be perfect Aramaic. But the belief of speaking in tongues, that it's not believed to be an actual language unless there's a reason for it, like I just explained there. The belief for possession, though, is that the person is speaking usually Latin, and that they are speaking like fluent Latin, correct Latin, or they're speaking another language, but it's a language that the priest knows. So that's one of the things about that. So the priest, like, it's supposed to be sending a message to the priest in a way that lets everybody in the room know there's something else inside this person. We can't anticipate that this person knows fluent Latin. but we know that the priest probably has a background in Latin because they're Catholic, and that's how they communicate directly with the priest. That's the belief about demonic possession languages. In Pentecostal Christianity, we don't have that because, again, there's not that Latin background expected of our pastors. So there's nothing of that. There are some cases where there's like, oh, the person was speaking and it sounded like babbling, but when we played the recording backwards, we realized they were speaking a language, but that is nothing. That is like a common belief or common occurrence. The series that part of The Conjuring, maybe that was it, The Conjuring. Yeah. I was once possessed by astral cephalopod. Are you talking about, oh my gosh, what's his name? Don't ever, anytime there's ever somebody who misspeaks, like on TV, like on live television, a live stream, reality TV, don't think that person is stupid, because you've got so much stuff going on in your head that when somebody says something, Cthulhu, that's the name I'm looking for, you're thinking like going here, and then a person says something that needs to pull you out of that thought process, and sometimes it could take you a second to switch gears. So don't judge people that are doing live talking. It's much easier for you knowing exactly what you meant. So there are times I have misspoken for sure. So so again, Signostic, we do want to be respectful to the concept, just so we can give it the, I guess the way that I kind of, the way that I always tell my students if they're trying to make a case is not to say something is ridiculous, but to explain it in such a way that anyone reading understands that is what you're trying to say. So that's the conclusion to draw from it, after just presenting the facts. So in this case, there doesn't necessarily have to be any speaking backwards. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about, this is actually in a video. I'm not 100% sure if, let's speed it up. I've heard people do that. If it's too difficult for you to hear, I'll do my best, but this is about, you guys can watch this, Inner Demons, Suburban Exorcist, and this is something, it's pretty short overall. It's a nice documentary, but it's pretty short. It's 22 minutes. So let's go ahead and give this part a listen. So the journalist here is attending a Pentecostal exorcism. So let's listen to it.
Jay Bartlett has travelled here from California, where he runs an evangelical ministry. He's friendly and chatty, and he certainly tells a good story.
And the demon was in the back of the sanctuary of this church, and I looked at him, and you could tell it was no longer him. It was the demon looking at me. And I asked him, I said...
All right, so I do want to just go through this and kind of stop it. So he says that, the demon was in the back of the church. I could tell it was no longer him, it was the demon. So he means the person that had made eye contact with him, that was the target of the exorcism, that person, it had been made clear. How many of us have had that experience, though, where we looked at someone in the eyes and they just seemed like they weren't all there? So I actually had an experience with a young student. He would... At first, it seemed like he was making some kind of silly excuse or something, but it became readily apparent that he needed mental health help, but unfortunately his family refused to take him, and we had to remove him from the class because he would have these violent outbursts. And it was very odd because the child was very calm, very intelligent, happy, and had no concept that the other kids hated him. He thought that they were all his friends. Like, he had no idea. But he would have this time where he would just, I don't know, he would become a different person almost. And he would do something like bite another student. And that's why we had to unfortunately take him out of the class. I just remember this one time, though, he I told him to please stop playing with your pencils and stuff. It's too loud. Like, he had a bunch of pencils. He was just kind of chunking them, like chucking them at the desk, and he was, just kind of drumming and stuff with this. But we were in the middle of having, it was too distracting for the other kids. So he needed to stop that. Hey, I can hold them at my desk if you want, but you need to stop doing that. I don't mind if you get up and walk around if you have that kind of energy. But please, we can't do that. So he kept doing that. So I took his pencils and I put them into his pencil case and said, we have to leave these here for right now, okay? But then you can take them out when we're finished with this part and, work on your thing. And he slumped back a little bit and looked at me. And then he got up and he put all the pencils into the trash can. Okay. So I took them out of the trash can for him. I said, no, you can keep them at your desk. It's totally, don't throw them away. It's okay. You're not in trouble. You just need to just have them on your desk. And he stood up and he looked at me, and it was this, like, didn't look at me. He looked past me. Like, it was like looking at a dead body, and he just fell onto the ground. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He didn't scream, didn't do any noise, didn't try to get any attention, didn't do the thing where, like, he had his eyes closed, but then he peeks or anything. Nothing like that. He just slumped on the ground, and he was just staring at the ceiling. It's hard to talk about this kid because his parents really needed to take him to get help. They really did. But when he's talking about, then I knew I was talking to the demon, you're probably talking to a guy that's having a hard time, so it's really, really difficult. Is that the Jim Jones sunglasses look? No, I do have some, yellow aviators, but I thought these went with the hair a little bit better. These are my migraine glasses, so that's why they're tinted. Yeah. Yes. What's with the glasses though? Oh, okay. So yeah, they are the migraine glasses. Yeah. Let's see. I see that look a lot in pastors like Kenneth Copeland. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. They just don't look. I mean, anything can happen. There are times when, somebody's talking and your eyes just kind of glaze over, like you're thinking about some other thing. You zone out. That's a look. So this concept of, like, when we want to evaluate, is a person demonically possessed? We need to step back from that and say, how do we know demons are real? How do we know demons can possess people? What are the hallmark traits of that so that we can rule out any possible other thing, right? This to me doesn't say, oh yes, it must have been demonic possession. But of course, when the person's telling the story and all the people in attendance already believe it, this will make you feel something. This will send a chill down your spine. This will make you feel like, oh, because of that feeling, you believe again that you're more justified in holding this belief. So let's go ahead and continue this for a little bit.
Are you making him walk strangely? He said, yes. I have chains around his legs. That's what demons do. They chain people up, spiritually enslave people.
The meeting is open to the public, but I get the sense that most people here are already strong in their Christian faith.
The blood of Jesus in this room tonight. The blood of the Lamb. The blood that heals. We thank you, Jesus.
It's not long before those in need of exorcism make themselves known.
I need to know, how many of you in this body or mind? How many of you in Jesus' name? How many of you? 24! 24 of these dead spirits. This is the demon coming up now. Do you want this on your head? Yes or no? These scales. Now in Jesus' name. You're going to do this.
The exorcisms seem to follow a kind of script. First prayers and words from Jay, followed by group prayer, and then finally, the bucket.
Come on, bring Jesus' name. Come on, to the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Out of the mouth. There we go.
It's a strange kind of spectacle.
All right. So the bucket is to get out there is a belief, our church didn't have this belief, but there is a belief in some Pentecostal churches that spitting up or like vomiting like foam in your stomach, that is a evidence of the spirit leaving your body, or the demon leaving your body. Yeah. Schizophrenic people act like your student. Yes, they do. And we can talk about it, because Obyung, you're on my Patreon, so if you'd like, we can talk about it more about that. That was, from where I was standing, I'm not a psychologist, but I would have put money on that kid eventually being diagnosed with schizophrenia, for not just the reasons that we're talking about, but all of the other things. It's so heartbreaking. When that kid had left, it was the end of the semester, and I just told him, I said, you're not bad. You're really good. You're really smart. You're such a good boy. You're so smart. You're not bad. And then he left, because he was always told that he's bad all the time by his family. And that I knew that he was leaving and his parents were not going to get him any help. And that boy that was, when he was there, he was, I don't know, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Like, he had so much potential, and it was almost like seeing this crossroads in front of him, where if he got help, he would go off to do awesome things. And if he didn't get help, he would be, eating bugs under a bridge somewhere someday. And after he left, I shut my door, I locked it, I sat under my desk so my students that walked by the door, because there was all these windows, I sat under my desk so they wouldn't see me, and I just cried. It was just so heartbreaking. So yeah, he definitely needed help. And I think that's the hard part about seeing these exorcisms, is there are some people that genuinely need help. But what about everybody else? You need some blue flash Ray-Ban aviators. I've got some, yeah, I have some yellow aviators. I think they're pretty good. So Nick, if you want to talk about the other stuff, you can join us on, what's it called? Discord. I'll send you the link here. But we do want to keep the topic a bit was revolving around the topic that we're talking about. I know we can't be 100% on topic when we're having these discussions. So let me go ahead and set this up, generate new link, copy, cool, awesome. Signostic says childhood schizophrenia is very rare and has a poor prognosis. Right. That's why I was a bit hesitant. Like, what other things might be going on in this kid's head? Because I know schizophrenia in childhood is not common at all. But I've only seen it once in my time as a teacher. It was hard. The fact that his parents, like, they were mad at us for bothering them at work when we would call and say, your kid is biting people. And yeah, I don't want to go too far into it, but I know, and there's somebody that is going to talk in this documentary that we're going to check out as well. They had a mental illness that, or I guess a brain issue, because it was epilepsy. I don't know if that counts as a mental illness or just brain dysfunction. But they needed help and didn't get it. So that's really upsetting. Knowing that kid could have gotten help and didn't is as bad as somebody trying to exorcise that child, I would say. But I don't know, maybe it's bad in a different way. But I don't think that everybody that is experiencing exorcisms is undergoing some kind of mental illness. They could be, but I don't think that. So why would this happen then? Why would this happen? Nick, bipolar disorder is physiologically very similar to epilepsy. Yeah, the person was like later diagnosed with what was it? I forget exactly the type of epilepsy, but she goes into it. Just noticed this vid is on SBS. Used to be one of the coolest Australian TV channels. Cool. A lot of cool documentaries. Yeah, so what could it be? Do you guys have any guesses or any ideas of what could it be? Why would somebody go see an exorcist or attend an exorcism, hoping like this group exorcism here, if they don't have any kind of mental illness? What do you think could be some of the reasons for that? Well, you guys are answering. Gotta go ahead and take a drink here. I like doing live streams, like teaching, just not in these dry winters. Okay, 2,000 years of Roman mysticism. That could be it. But remember, you may have joined us after I mentioned this, but exorcisms are not unique to Christianity. And so, like over here in Korea, we have shamanistic exorcisms, and that definitely doesn't have that 2,000 years of Roman mysticism. It predates it. So why would people attend these exorcisms? Why do these possessed people always throw up, cry, or produce something out of their body during the exorcism? I mean, in every culture. That's a great question. We'll talk about that. Let's see. A good many schizophrenics have been helped or cured. They simply lacked vitamin B3 and B12. Then that's not schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is not a lack of B12. That would be symptoms that mimic schizophrenia. That, like, for example, there's a difference between clinical depression and I'm not getting enough sleep, or I didn't get enough vitamin D. They can be similar to each other and definitely should be ruled out for sure. But we do want to be careful that schizophrenia is not cured by vitamin B12, right? So we can say a good many cases of people who were concerned, perhaps I have schizophrenia, which I know is very wordy for this 200 character limit, but we do want to be careful with that. Mental illness is going to be like diabetes. It is a fundamental dysfunction in an organ, and how that affects your body. It's not going to be fixed. So you can manage it, but you will have relapses, and you will have to continue managing it. So I don't say that to be negative, but I just say that for people that have this belief that as long as they do this thing, and it actually does apply to the exorcism thing we'll talk about in a second as well, as long as I do this thing, I will be cured. And we have to be careful that is not typically the case. The body has a hard time bouncing back from stuff. And even things like a broken bone that's healed, you may still have long-term repercussions from that, yeah. What was the question specifically? Yeah, I can go ahead and type it. The question is, if not a mental illness, what reason would people have to seek exorcisms? So if they're not suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness that everyone's like, oh man, you totally should go see this exorcist, it sounds like this is what you got. If they don't have that mental illness, what are some reasons they would seek out an exorcism? Let's see. True, but Christianity as we know it today was Romanized by Constantine and heavily influenced by Roman mysticism. So why do in the West do we get exorcisms? 2,000 years of Roman mysticism. Yes, so that's the West. Yes, that would be for the West. Definitely. I just wanted to remind to you and then everybody else too that these are not unique to Christianity, and they're definitely not unique to the West. Yeah, so they are still performed pretty much, yeah, around the world. And then we also had mentioned possessions are not always considered negative, like in the case of the voodoo religion. Accidental toxin ingestion, possibly. Okay. That's an interesting answer. Maybe a desire to participate in a group ritual, a sense of being healed and being cleansed. Okay. Bipolar and epilepsy are completely different. Epilepsy can be completely physiological. Bipolar is psychological. But we do have to remember that a lot of the stuff with like psychology does have to also do with brain function. So we do, it's a bit, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I do, for anybody else, not necessarily, we do want to be careful that the concept of psychology, this idea of, well, it's all in your head, as some people believe, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, that is in the brain, you know. So that is how the brain is either sending incorrect signals, responding in a way that it normally wouldn't, but there's some kind of dysfunction going on. Let's see, when I had my psychosis, I went to a native shaman to get exorcised. It didn't do anything. I felt like I was taken advantage of because he charged a lot of money. That's interesting. Let's see. I just joined the live streams on YouTube or Discord. So they're on YouTube, so that's what we're doing right now. I just notify you guys on Discord, and there's additional chatting and stuff there. Globally, early unsuccessful attempts at psychiatry. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. But in the case of not actually being a mental illness, what would it be? And so Menno and Yusuf, you actually both touched on two different reasons this happens. And so part of it is a desire to participate in a group ritual and have a sense of being healed or cleansed. To add to that, it is also a way to put your problems on an external factor. I'm not a bad person. It was that I was demon possessed. It wasn't me doing these terrible things that against God. Remember, these are people that have a very strong religious belief. They want to do, quote unquote, the right thing. They want to do the moral thing in terms of their religious beliefs. But of course, a lot of these rules kind of go against human nature, right? The idea or the curiosity, human curiosity in questioning things, that can be seen as a lack of faith, and they want to show they have good faith, right? So why am I questioning so many things? Like what happened with me, where I would be questioning, and once somebody said, well, God works in mysterious ways, if I continued to question, it was blamed on I'm possessed by demons or I'm lacking faith and had opened myself to demonic possession. So that's one of the beliefs there. Another belief is that, you know, something that I might be doing that's against God, like saying too many bad words or watching things that are adult, like pornography, or participating in various like sexual acts, either by yourself or with other people. Doing some kind of like alcohol or being addicted to other types of drugs. That's not me that's addicted to this. That's the demonic possession. And so to be able to blame it on something else, that I'm not this person that's so flawed. I, as me, truly can follow God. It's just that something along the way got me demonically possessed. And once we get rid of that, then we can say that's gone. And for everybody else in the group who knew that this was a fault, like let's say that I was an alcoholic, okay? So we can say that everybody knew I was an alcoholic and thought gave me the side eye when I would show up to church drunk or something, for example. Now, when we see this in public, they know, aha, it wasn't that this person is an alcoholic, it's that they were possessed by the demon of alcoholism, and so now I'm no longer judged because I was possessed, it wasn't my fault, and I knew enough, had enough faith to get exorcised, and so now I'm rid of it, so I did the right thing. That's what everyone's going to see. In these types of cults, and one of the markers of these cults is that you kind of shun everybody else. You want to stay very insular. So a lot of your social interaction comes from church people. So you're either interacting with a lot of people at church during church time, or in cases like this, you're coming outside of this normal sermon time to do other activities at the church. So for me, especially when I was able to drive, I was going to church a lot. I went to church on Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Saturday afternoons for worship practice because I was on the worship team as the bass guitarist. And then I would go to all the sermons in the morning and then the 6 o'clock sermon to be playing bass, you know. And so most of my interaction outside of school was either family or the church. And so that's a really big, you're not... Yes, these are large churches, but you're not like this faceless person there. They know you, you know them, and to look good in their eyes is a helpful thing for you socially. Let's see, I would feel like it would stem from a desire to be treated as someone who was touched by a higher power. Also, possibly an attempt at absolving yourself from personal responsibility. So it's definitely the second one. For the first one, at least in the Pentecostal churches, that's going to be the slain in the spirit type of thing. So to show like you're touched by God, that would be something like suddenly speaking in tongues out loud, and then having somebody translate that, or somebody speaks in tongues out loud during a worship service, and then you translate that. So that would be like more of a, whoa, that person had like communication with God. Yeah, so Yusuf, you were talking about the toxin that induces some sort of psychosis. So the reason I was saying it's very along those lines is that the other thing that happens is that we have this assumption that I'm okay today, I'm gonna be okay tomorrow. And that's just not the case. In a very small way, to give an example, my finger is never gonna have the same shape, because 2 nights ago I had a cooking accident. That's done. It's over, and it's never gonna be the same after that. And I think we have this now, for those of you that have not followed my channel for a long time, or you have but you hadn't heard or anything, I have a lot of medical problems from the military, to include these migraines. And I did a video about migraines. They're not just head pain, they are a neurological disorder, and that affects everything. You know, that's why I've got these glasses on, because it affects how I see. I had to be careful what type of drink that I made, because it affects how you taste. It affects sound, so there are sounds that will hurt during a migraine. There's smells that will trigger vomiting during a migraine, or dry heaving. It affects your ability to perceive cold or hot, like the proper temperature, so you can feel you're in a room and then you're shivering cold, packing all these blankets on top of you, and then 2 minutes later you are sweating hot. You're taking off blankets, you're taking off jackets, you're stripping down, and then you just keep switching back and forth. But it also affects things like your vision and your memory. And so it's very difficult for me to, not only just being in pain, but it's difficult for me to do any of these live streams if I'm having a certain type of migraine, because I will lose thought. And there are times when you guys maybe have seen, like right before I have to discontinue or stop the live stream, I will lose my words in the middle of the sentence. Now, I know that migraines are the issue for that. But if you didn't, that's one of the signs, quote unquote, of demonic possession, is forgetfulness. To assume that you're going to be okay your whole life. Like, a lot of these things that people are talking about are things that happen as you age. Not necessarily normal stuff that happens as you age, but things that maybe you had some kind of issue with your brain that maybe you weren't aware of, maybe a genetic issue, and it's starting to manifest itself and you didn't realize it. Visual changes. I mean, there are times, I remember I did a video where I knew better. However, I felt convinced that the sky was giving me a message. And I logically knew that wasn't true. And I think that was the only thing that stops me, you know what I mean, from going, off the deep end. But I felt convinced that the sky was giving me a message. There are times when I feel convinced that there's something giving me a message because of certain numbers. anytime I see signs that have different colors for words, like some words are a different color or some letters are a different color, I read the different colored letters or the different colored words because I think that there's a hidden meaning there. I logically know this is not the case. And that's what stops me from becoming like a conspiracy theorist, for example. I understand that thinking because that thinking happens to me. I just know it's not that. I know it's a situation that my brain is a bit wonky right now, and once this migraine is over, I'll be back to normal. So I understand this thinking because it happens to me. But the problem is that if I didn't have these migraines, and if I wasn't so skeptical, or I didn't know that I was having migraines, because there are people that have migraines and it's just pain, and then they'll experience a migraine that doesn't have pain, where you will have these very strange visuals, and they'll think, I can see auras, I can see people's auras. I mean, that's where a lot of this concept of auras can come from. These people are just having migraines, and they just didn't know. So if you're suddenly having that, and migraines are the most common neurological disorder that's diagnosed. So if suddenly you're having this and you didn't have it before, and you didn't know this could happen, you didn't know what it was, and you already believed in demonic possession, and you tell somebody, these days I'm just like, it sounds strange, but like I forget stuff, and I don't know, like sometimes for people I see like lights around them and things, and like I hear stuff, but I don't really know what it is, but I hear things. Gosh, have you heard of anything like that? Do you know what it is? And if your friend is also very religious, they might say, it sounds like demonic possession. And they're serious. And you think, well, I listed my symptoms. They have an answer. Okay, let's see what it is. That's how this stuff happens for a lot of these cases. And it's sad because you need help. I'm glad to have the medication that I have. I could easily see how if I was in an area where, or if I was just a person that didn't have this understanding, I could easily see how this could be perceived as demonic possession. I'm doing something and suddenly I'm stricken with pain. That's how a lot of these cases of possession are discussed. Yeah, let's go ahead and see what you guys are saying here. The Salem witch trials are suspected because of ergot poisoning. Did we talk about that? Did you and I talk about that during a live stream? Because I feel like I mentioned that in a live stream, but I'm not 100% sure. I remember the movie The Exorcism also had the same sound effects, just like shaman rituals. It drove me nuts throughout the movie. Yes. There is a lot of this kind of thing that happens during religious rituals. There's a lot of rhythmic movements, rhythmic sounds. For students that are like memorizing the Quran, they do a lot of rocking. You guys may have seen this as well for Jewish people praying at the Wailing Wall. But yeah, let's see. Exorcism could broadly be considered a form of ritual purification, something common to all religions. Yeah, in a way. Let's see. 4K painting slide on my TV. All right, that's good. Obiang, that's good. So I just want to see what you guys were saying here. So to get back to where we were, the other question was, how can people have this like vomit response when you are in a high stress situation? You may vomit. I'm a person that, like, anytime I'm in pain, vomit will follow. I don't know why. It's just like that's a thing that happens for me. If I back when I could run, I would run until I vomited, which you shouldn't do. I thought I was going hard. That's actually not healthy. But just to kind of show you that kind of that stress and adrenaline in your body where you can just start puking. However, if they put the bucket there, someone's gonna puke. And I don't mean puke. Remember, they're not vomiting. It's not like projectile vomit, pea soup kind of stuff. They will spit. So even if you're not the type of person that has that vomit response to things, you will spit into the bucket. And that's what it's for. It's to show, and again, you're showing everyone this is what's going on. Let's assume that you think this could be demonic possession, and when you sit down in that chair and that guy starts talking to you, you don't feel anything. You don't feel the demon trying to speak through you. You don't feel anything, and you think, oh my goodness, did I make a mistake? But now you have the eyes of the congregation on you. You're going to react in any of the ways that you've seen other people reacting. Not necessarily to lie to yourself, but you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, maybe if we just kind of get the process going, then the demon will take over. We gotta. It's like when you leave your lights on and you got a manual transmission and your battery dies. We're not. The engine's not trying to turn over. The battery's just totally dead. Let's put it in a first gear and get the car kind of rolling, pop the clutch. Let's get this thing started, right? That's kind of the idea that some people have. Remember, they're not lying. They are deceiving themselves, but it's not like a lie or performance to trick other people necessarily. You could plant these people, just like a psychic would plant people in an audience and pretend to have a psychic reading on the person, or those faith healers that will pretend, but you actually don't need to even go that far. You could have them there just in case, but you don't even need to go that far. The people will do it themselves. That's just how we react in these situations. I'm sure you guys have seen, the Zimbardi experiment, the Stanford prison experiment. You guys have probably heard about that. If not, I recommend checking it out. The prison experiment was very interesting because the college students were chosen at random to act as prison guards or prisoners. Keep them under control. The prison guards were so awful. The prisoners were like traumatized. And again, this is not because they felt justified, because prisoners are bad people. They knew these are students, I'm a student, and our placement here was totally random. There should have been no logical, rational reason for them to dehumanize the quote-unquote prisoners in the experiment, but they absolutely did. And the prisoners just followed suit. They didn't fight back. They fought back against the guards and stuff, but they weren't like, okay, well, I'm gonna go, this is not working out, I'm gonna go back to my dorm. Like, they didn't do that. They sat in there. So we are very, very, as a species, just really into roles. We also are really affected by other people. You guys may have known about that, following the crowd experiment, where they had a bunch of people that were part of the experiment and one person who wasn't, but that person also believed everybody else was a random participant. They didn't realize they were in on the experiment. And so they would have this poster, and they would say line A, line B, line C. Which line is the shortest? Obviously line C. And so that's what they thought, okay, is the person going to say line C, or are they going to go with the crowd? So all the other people who were part of the study, they said line B, which obviously wasn't true. And they said, yeah, B, 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 B. And then the majority of the actual participants, they knew C was the shortest line, but they just heard all of the other, what they believed were random participants, say B. So they also said B. It wasn't because they were lazy and not paying attention, they didn't understand the question, nothing like that. They just kind of thought, well, do I need glasses? If everybody's saying B, maybe I'm misunderstanding something. And that plays into all of these religious experiences. Religious experiences are just another type of psychological experience. So that's something to kind of remember, Might there be something that is totally, quote unquote, supernatural or spiritual or whatever going on? Maybe. But as far as we can tell, it appears to pretty closely mirror genuine experiences or genuine, like, documented psychological phenomenon. Yeah. Peter Popoff, the miracle water guy, right? Yeah, and I mean, using the placebo effect is a very, very helpful thing, which we'll talk about in a second here. My mom used to be like that. Every time she had period cramps, she'd vomit. Yeah, so that sounds like your mom and I have the same. I thought that was a fake study. It was not. No. The studies, there were some pretty interesting studies. There's another one, the Milgram experiment. They wanted to know if the Nazi excuse of, oh, I was just following orders, is that a viable excuse? And so they had these people in a study, and again, you can look it up. They have like the actual study that was filmed. It's pretty interesting. But about 65% of the people were issuing what they believed to be a deadly electric shock to a person they believed was already unconscious or dead. And they just kept issuing the shock because somebody else told them to do it. This wasn't, they weren't yelling at them. They weren't threats. It wasn't anything like, you know, you promised to do this and we will kill your family or something like that. It's very important that the experiment continues. And that's basically all the experimenters told those people. It's, you know, it is imperative to finish the experiment. That was it. That's all that prompted them to do an act that they believe killed another human being. And again, it was about 65%. You know, any of us would hope we're in the 35. But how do you know? You know? Actually, the prison experiment, they attempted to quit the experiment. The guy refused to let them quit. The modern definition, he kidnapped them at that point. Yes, so that they had... there were those people that had tried to quit. What I'm saying is that nobody had just like left the experiment in that sense. They also just kept doing whatever the guards had asked them to do. So yeah, you're right. I should have, again, that's one of those things where we're trying to keep it brief and it comes across as like misinformation or not giving, like not going as in-depth as I should have. But yes, there were people that did try to quit. But what I'm saying is that they didn't like leave. You know what I mean? Like, this is, you can't keep me here. This is illegal. I'm going. You know, nothing like that. From what I understood, the experimenter's colleague was witnessing what was going on, and the experimenter was like, "Yeah, look, isn't this interesting stuff? Isn't this interesting?" And the colleague was like, "This is disgusting. What the hell is wrong with you?" And the person was like, "What? No. This is for science. This is for science." And the colleague said something along the lines of, "If this is the person that you actually are, I have severely misjudged you." And then that person left. And that's when the experimenter had realized, you know what, actually, this is really bad, and had discontinued the experiment. I think the experiment was supposed to run for something like 2 weeks or so, but it ended at around 6 days. That I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was something along those lines of it didn't even hit the halfway mark of the extent of the experiment. But yeah, that's a very good point to bring up. Zimbardo himself agreed that it was more of a demonstration than a scientific experiment. Okay, so if that's what you meant, then okay. I thought when you said it was a fake study, I thought you were talking about like the like it was like totally not true, like it totally didn't happen. One of the reasons I bring it up is we did use it to kind of explain the situation that happened at Abu Ghraib. And so this concept of like, you're in charge, it's okay to treat people like subhuman trash kind of thing. He might have just said that for legal reasons. That's also true. That's also true. Because yeah, as I said, he was pretty harshly judged by at least one of his colleagues. And so I'm trying to think exactly how he had phrased it, because I've heard him talk about it, and it was just he kind of, I don't know, he seemed very like cavalier about it, like, oh, you know, I kind of got carried away. But I feel like should have been a little more serious, you know, just a little more serious, maybe a little more caring about his subjects there. All of science or physics is stamp collecting. All science is physics or stamp collecting. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Wounded monk for not losing his job and whatnot. Right. So I think there is maybe some of that to kind of clean up, because I think that anybody who saw what was happening would immediately have discontinued it. You know what I mean? That's why when his colleague, he's like, yeah, look at it, check it out, this is super cool. That's why his colleague was like immediately disgusted. Like anybody who saw what happened would be totally disgusted with it. Perhaps the psychologist himself was a sociopath and just didn't have that. And I don't mean that like, oh, he's just crazy and wanted to, watch the world burn or something like negative like that. I mean like a person who just doesn't have the ability, like a absent or reduced capacity to experience empathy. Yeah. It's a jab at psychology, don't mind me. Oh, okay. Uh-oh, do we have a Scientologist in the mix? Anyway, let's get back onto this. We did kind of sidetrack. The reason we did sidetrack with that psychology stuff was just to let people know that this has been established, that people will behave in a way that other people expect, especially when they put themselves there on purpose. So that is another thing to consider.
Almost like a sport. In each case, the power of good wins out over evil.
Yeah, hasn't she trained? Can I get a picture with you? Yeah, the big button. That should be. Yeah, the big button.
So he says, hasn't she changed? Can I get a picture with you? I mean, this is a high stress situation, and suddenly the stress is gone. That's going to feel relaxing, right? I mean, just imagine you have you're feeling kind of mad, and then I make you sprint for 2 minutes as hard as you can. And you're not, let's say that you're not used to sprinting. So this is, better if you're just not used to sprinting. And I make you sprint as hard as you can for 2 minutes. And then I say, okay, how do you feel? And you just go, I feel tired. But you know what? I feel kind of good, kind of awake. Okay. And I say, are you still angry? No, I feel pretty good. That's kind of how you're going to feel. It's a situation where you're hit with a lot of physical stress, and you're going to get that like feel good rush after the fact. So of course she's going to look different. Of course she's going to feel different. So let's continue.
And there's a kind of showman-like quality to Jay that seems to put people at ease and apparently brings the demons out.
It's really strange feeling. It's like you are speaking, it's coming out of your mouth, but it's not you.
You're the strong man. Yes! You hold all the pain.
Yes!
You have fire darts in her.
Yes! I used to go get my palms read, and I used to go and do the tarot card reading, and you don't realize you're actually opening a door for Satan, because he has access to you through the demonic.
So again, this is a Pentecostal type of belief. I'm not 100% sure about Catholics. We talked about it in the cafeteria club thing, because we did talk about, exorcisms a bit. Somebody asked, how do you become possessed by demons? And in the Pentecostal belief, you have to allow demonic possession. That doesn't mean you say, oh, mighty Satan, I ask that you come into my life and take me over and provide power or something. It could be something where you see a psychic, use a tarot cards, Ouija board, something like that. And I actually have tarot cards here. Let me just grab them. So I was interested in this concept of using cards as a way to provide people advice. More like, first of all, just to learn it as just an old trade, just that seemed like fun, but also to provide people some advice, because it's a lot, people tend to take offense to something when you say it, right, as a person, but when the card says it, that's different. But the card doesn't say it usually, it's your interpretation of the card. So that's all these are. So if we just kind of pull a card, and let's talk about how should I treat my migraine in my body today. So let's pull a card. This is the King of Wands, and it is reversed. Okay, so when it's reversed, it has a different meaning. The King of Wands is all about following structure, following schedules, rigid kind of stuff. So reversed means go with the flow, don't follow schedules, or your plans will be interrupted. And you know, I'm the type of person that keeps exercise on a schedule. So if I see this and I already want to tell myself, hey, take it easy today, now I can tell myself, hey, take it easy today. But it's not me being lazy, it's the cards telling me it's okay. Do you see how that works? I could interpret that any other way. I can interpret that as exercise, but do it at your own pace. Don't do it as you had scheduled. But that's not how I feel, right? I feel like it's okay to tell myself to take it easy today and just not do it. So that's how this stuff works. So there's nothing about it that is magical, demonic. I didn't like summon Satan or request, oh mighty Satan, please come and speak to me through the cards and then, you know, pull a card. It wasn't anything like that. It's so the idea of Ouija boards or tarot cards or psychics in Pentecostal Christianity is that you are actually consulting demons, but you believe that these demons are just kind spirits trying to help you, but you were taken advantage of. So in this way, you were opening yourself to Satan, but you didn't think you were. And so that's why she was talking about that. And that's where she believes that this possession had come in. But again, how many times are you going to encounter somebody who has a tarot card or plays with tarot cards or looks up numerology? I mean, I'm sure many of you have just looked up your zodiac sign and a horoscope just out of curiosity. Is there anything to this, or is it total, you know, nonsense? Just looked it up. Looked up a birth chart just out of curiosity. A lot of people have. A lot of people have. It doesn't mean you believed in it. It just means you looked it up. But in the Pentecostal belief, that opened you up for demonic attack. So now let's think again about the percentage of people on the planet that have internet access, and those people looked up something that has to do with tarot cards, horoscopes, something like that. Of those people, how many of them do you think would have some type of problem in their life ever? 100%, right? So if you already are part of this belief, this Pentecostal belief system, or even if you're not, and you're talking to a person who is, and you say something like, man, I've just been having a lot of troubles lately, blah, 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 and that person believes in this type of system and says something like, well, this is going to sound like a weird question, but have you ever, like, I don't know, followed horoscopes or like crystals, or did you ever see a psychic or get your palm read or do tarot cards? And the person says, you know what, I have. Yeah, I do that regularly. That's opening yourself up to Satan. And the person will say something like, no, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with Satan. Yes, it does. You know, the greatest trick the devil ever has performed is to convince the world that he does not exist. You see, this is how he gets into it. But the Bible is very specific about witchcraft, the occult. It's very against that. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. And all of that, no matter how it's dressed up, is actually Satan. And that's why you're having all these troubles. If you're a person that's already kind of believing this stuff, that this concept of the spirits are there and they can affect my life in a positive or negative way, that sounds like an answer, doesn't it? If I can just go attend this thing, go through this ritual, and then I'm okay. Wow, that's a lot better, isn't it? That's better than having to seek therapy regularly. That's better than having to realize, hey, you know what? I do have a problem and I'm not managing it. I got to learn to start doing that. That's easier than physical therapy if you've got any kind of medical issue. It's easier than coming to terms with the fact that your body is falling apart. I mean, those are hard truths to have to get into. So if somebody can give you an answer of, it doesn't mean it's the right answer, just an answer of, you know what, you should go do this thing, I think you're possessed by demons, that's appealing. You know, that's appealing. So let's see what you guys are saying in the live stream. Let's see. Post some links about the prison experience. Yeah, very cool. I wanted to see this so badly, I didn't get a notification here now. That's okay, we're still talking about it. Everything, it seems, in the, what is that, United Pentecostal Church and Assemblies of God. So these are different types of the Pentecostal churches. Open someone up to Satan. Yoga is another one. You know what, Summer? Yoga is actually mentioned in here. I was always told the same thing about yoga, that it is Hinduism, it's spirituality, it's people, Hindu people trying to indoctrinate Westerners into this demonic pantheist or polytheist religion by making it seem like it's just exercise, blah, blah, blah. But again, you know, I had talked about being not a skeptical person in terms of my religion, but a skeptical person in terms of religious authorities. And some of the stuff they had told me already didn't make sense. I knew that. So I said, you know, I still just want to check it out. And I went to a yoga class just to see, and it was just stretching and stuff, you know. It's still a really good workout, you know, kick your butt, but there wasn't anything religious, you know. There wasn't any guided meditation, there wasn't anything. It was just stretch and then rest. That's all it was. You know, an hour and a half of different poses, and then that was it, yeah. I wonder if a demon would let me take a mortgage out for some minor stuff like shaving off 20 to 30 pounds just to get started on weight loss. I'll pay off my spiritual mortgage, I promise. I think I left this up on purpose just in case it ever came up again. I think this is it. Yeah. So, let's see. There we go. Move that here. Awesome. So that was me. In the past, Nick. So if you want to ask any questions about weight loss, no demons need to be involved. You don't have to go that route. But I will say there are people who do turn to the Bible for weight loss. And it's just like turning to prayer for quitting smoking or anything like that. It's just not, that ain't it, you know. I don't know what it is, but it ain't it. Okay. I was afraid to go to ED treatment. I was afraid to get yoga and guided meditation. Zensei said there's ED treatment. Yeah, what do you mean? It's not erectile dysfunction treatment, but there is treatment for erectile dysfunction. Usually, by the way, for any of you that are worried about erectile dysfunction, if you get it, please see a doctor about your heart. It is one of the first symptoms of heart disease. Yeah, so. I have a question. How do I get a personal demon? Seems useful as heck. So again, these are not like, it was always strange to me growing up because it was this belief that Jesus has all the answers. Why on earth would anybody turn to Satan or demons? So within this belief system, you would probably rather have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and not a personal demon. I had a student who believed in ghosts, and to prove to me that ghosts were real, he showed me a video of things moving without physical contact on a security camera, and he thought that'd be enough. You know, Eduardo, sometimes we do have to talk about how do we know something is true in my classes. And I want the students to understand that when we're talking about things like the age of the earth or real, what counts as a good like website, like a good resource to use in an essay, we have to talk about this. And so just as a fun kind of thing, I show them some of these, you know, top 10 ghost videos or top 10 ghosts caught on film or something like that. And we kind of go through it. There's a lot of these that they just need to kind of understand they can be staged, you know, and I tell them, does that mean that ghosts don't exist? No, that doesn't mean ghosts don't exist. They might, but is this proof of it? Probably not, you know. we got to rule out everything else first. And so after you do like the first video in any compilation, the students are like kind of spooked out. And then we kind of go through it. Okay, second video, kind of spooky, but then we go through it again. Okay, third video, by that time they're like, oh, well, this could be this, and this could be this, and this could be this. They're really good at understanding this is not what it looks like. And then sometimes it'll pop up. It's totally like, how could this happen? It looks like there's a ghostly figure moving across in random ways, just gliding through everything. How could the security camera pick that up? And I say, well, let's look at it again. Any ideas? Well, it could be faked. It could be faked. And a lot of times it's just a bug walked across the screen or across the camera lens, you know. So we kind of go through that, and I think it's helpful to see that. But again, we need to know, do demons exist? How do we know? How can we demonstrate it? Can they possess people? Do they possess people? How do we know that they possess people? And something like a person using tarot cards. I mean, I've used tarot cards, right? We just did it here. I don't have any additional issues. You know what I mean? So it's we can't say that, well, use of tarot cards means that this will happen. There's also, you know, ignoring the misses and only counting the hits, that kind of thing. Let's see. I don't need demons or Jesus. Help a girl out, right? Darn demons causing my chronic pain. Honestly, Brad, that was one of the things that was blamed. I was in the process of still trying to figure out good treatment. I had just gotten out of the military, discharged for medical reasons, and that was some of the stuff that I heard. You just don't have enough faith. It's because you stopped going to church. I'm like, what are you talking? I haven't stopped going to church. And that's one of the issues with that expectation that goes awry. And so we're gonna, well, I guess we don't even have to watch it. Basically, the journalist goes and says this is one of these success stories, and she talks about a person who was doing. He said that he was masturbating too much, and I guess using pornography a lot, and was spending a lot of money on it, and that he had this demon exorcised from him, and everything was fine. And so she refers a success story. And I thought to myself, well, sure, you follow the success stories because you don't follow the people that aren't success stories. You know, if you're a personal trainer, you want to show the people that have a successful before and after photo. You don't show the before and, and they gave up and ended up gaining more weight. And that's the after, is that they gained more weight. You don't show that. And that's one of the problems with these, is that the people who have successfully quit drinking and attribute it to converting or exorcism or something like that, that's what they'll tell you. But you're not going to hear that from the people that went through an exorcism and then kept drinking. They're not going to say, yeah, you know, that exorcism really helped me out. They're not even going to bring it up. So you're only going to hear the success stories. You're never going to hear all the other people that went through this process, had the placebo effect happen, had that adrenaline rush, felt different, felt better, and then 2 or 3 days later went right back into whatever problem it was, because of course that problem didn't get fixed. Why does it get fixed, quote unquote, in some other cases? That person is just at that moment where they were ready to make those changes in their life, and they did, and that's great. They made those changes. To say that it was due to this exorcism, it really discounts that person's willpower. And it also means that the next time they need to make a change in their life, and that's what happens with the person in the video, he goes back for another exorcism for something else. So now this becomes what he does, instead of going through therapy or saying, okay, you know what? I got rid of that addiction by myself. Now I got another problem to deal with. I'm going to fix it. He doesn't do that. He says, okay, I had a problem. I got the exorcism. The problem went away. Now I've got another problem. Time to get another exorcism. And so he really doesn't realize his own ability, which is really sad. I was going to say he doesn't realize his own power, but I didn't, because anybody who's watching this that is in this Pentecostal belief system, They would say, see, they're talking about power and trying to take on the place of God and blah, blah, blah. I'm powerless and God's the one with the power. So that's why I said his own ability. Yeah. Let's see. I followed for about 10 years. Yeah, that's right. Are you on the Discord, by the way, Niboopsh? I did not know people were using the Bible for weight loss. They are. So there's like the biblical diet. That's something people use. It's the Daniel diet. That's what it's called. It's veganism. It's veganism with no processed food. But the Daniel diet is what it is. It comes from Daniel chapter 1 verses 1 through 8, I believe, where Daniel is put into prison and he says, hey, all the meats that you guys have are sacrificed to idols, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to eat that. I'm just going to eat, like, pulses, which are, like, legumes, grains, vegetables, whatever. And the guard's like, no, man, you're going to totally die. And Daniel's like, all right, I got to bet. I'll bet with you, okay? After 10 days, I bet I'm going to look healthier than all these guys here that you're feeding, like, these leftover scraps. And if that's true, then you should put everybody else on this diet. If it's not true, then oh well. But if it is true, then you should put everybody else on this diet too. So they come back after 10 days. Daniel's very healthy. The other guys look kind of sluggish. And they say, wow, this must be it. So they put everybody else on this Daniel diet, which again is just veganism, whole foods veganism. I don't know what that bing was. What was that bing? Was that a message to me from something? Somebody send me money? Can you guys? Is that possible? It's like, you don't have to send it, but I'm saying, is it a thing where is it possible to do that? I'm just curious. But no, I don't know where that bing comes from. Let's see. Wait, erectile dysfunction is a symptom of heart disease. I didn't know that. Yeah, so it is. So just FYI. It has to do with the blood not being able to fully get to that area. And that's usually due to the buildup of like plaque and stuff in the arteries, and it's it's like one of the treatments or the best treatments for erectile dysfunction, diet and exercise. Once they lose that weight, then a lot of these guys are able to get back into it. When we're talking about physical erectile dysfunction, for people that are unable to achieve erection because they have some kind of psychological issue, a stress issue, that you got to get help for that in a different way. But for like physical erectile dysfunction, so you still have all the same feelings of arousal, it's just that portion is not working like it used to. Typically, yeah, diet and exercise. It doesn't mean that you are obese. You could be that term where it's called skinny fat, where you don't look like you're overweight, but you have a lot of extra body fat around your internal organs. So that's another thing to consider. You don't have to look fat, quote unquote, in order to have this issue. Yeah. Yes. So ED, we're talking about eating disorder. Yeah. Let's see. 108 bows, 3,000 bows in Buddhism is similar to running a marathon. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're woken up early. I remember when I did a temple stay, they wake up at like 4:30 a.m. to start doing the bowing and stuff. You woke up, did your stuff, kind of energized, and that's what I recommend to my students. Hey, wake up at the same time. I know we got online classes. You don't got to catch the bus. I get that. Wake up at the same time you normally would for regular school. But instead of getting ready to catch the bus and then commuting, use that time to exercise. You guys can look up exercise videos on YouTube. Doesn't even have to be long. 5 minutes, good exercise. It'll get you ready for the day. Because they're always dead tired first period, and I'm like got energy, except for when I got a migraine. Let's see. So Nick, we do want to be careful with some of the words we use, so that's why your message was not posted. It was held for review. This is like student, like it's appropriate for minors to watch this, so we do want to be careful with some of that language. But basically you're saying that sometimes if you are drinking too much, it's difficult to achieve an erection, and that does mess with your confidence for a while, which can psychologically affect you. But again, that's a psychological thing. That's a little different. That's why I made that distinction. Let's see. I'm dead. People really do anything to not eat veggies and jog. Yes. There was also a supersized versus super skinny. I'm sure Summer, just like me, you've seen all of them. Dr. Christian had gone, his name is Christian Jessen. So Dr. Christian had attended different places in the US just to see how they're dealing with their increasing obesity epidemic situation. And he went to this place where they have aerobics, but it's like church aerobics. So it's at a church, and there's one of the church people leading the aerobics, and they say that we're doing this to praise God and also help our bodies. And they're talking about how like some of the aerobics they do are like this, and they say we're doing prayer arms and blah blah blah. Aerobics are great. I'm actually considering doing a video. I'm not sure if I can, just because of the music I need to use, but just to show you guys how to do an at-home exercise bike aerobics workout, just very simply, just to kind of do it together just for fun. But you don't have to do all the prayer arms kind of stuff. And they're talking about, yeah, I feel so embarrassed at a gym, but I feel like here nobody's judging me. Like, these same people would have judged you in a gym if they're that type of person. Most people aren't going to judge you in a gym. They're too busy focused on their own selves. Just period. If they're going to be judging you, they're going to be judging you anyway. And I would say I would feel more self-conscious as a former obese person. I would feel more self-conscious at church, because I feel like this would be a moral failing, that my body's a temple, I'm not treating it as a temple. I would feel like the church people are judging me more than I would at a gym. Yeah. The relationship, okay, that's interesting to hear. Yusuf, we want to make sure to not talk about so much of the other type of drug commentary. So we're gonna, I guess, delete it. Can I ask you to delete it? Because I think if I delete it, it'll remove you. I don't want to remove you. So if you can delete that, that would be helpful. Lose 100 pounds in 3 weeks by eating Bibles. Buy yours now for 4 easy payments a night. Hey, gotta see if we get that fiber in there. I'm glad you told me, because religion will often teach young boys that erections are bad, mainly in regards to lust as a sin. Thank you, Yusuf. At least that's what they told me at my old church. Yes. That's actually, if we want to talk about, early church stuff, Kellogg's was the cornflakes, like Kellogg's cornflakes. Kellogg, I forget if he was part of the Mennonites or the Quakers, but it was this belief that exciting food stimulates sexual arousal. So there's some beliefs about food. I mean, you guys have probably heard of like aphrodisiacs, for example. So there are some superstitions about food and how it can relate to sexual stimulation. So his idea was to feed people something super bland. That's also one of the ideas behind maintaining that concept of circumcision, even though a lot of Christians will tell you that it doesn't matter, but they still prefer to get their child circumcised. For that reason, that had stayed in the US, mostly because of this idea that it is less pleasurable. So it was this hope that it would deter little boys from, having those, personal experiences in their bedroom, so. Yeah, no, don't worry about it, Yusuf. Don't worry about it. Using Bibles for extra weights when doing squats. Yeah, if you got a big backpack, put a bunch of Bibles in there, pull the straps tight so that way the backpack doesn't wiggle. Yeah, start doing some squats. Actually, I would put the backpack on the front, just personally. I think if you put it on the back, it might pull you back a little too much. Make sure you're evenly balanced. Summer says, I do know you, girl. Bench press stacks of King James Bibles. Get that into your workout today. There's a lot of good workout stuff you can do, just even with like a 2-liter bottle of water at home, but I do appreciate that you guys are using this as for that. Of course, you know me, I watch those repeatedly. Of course. I know. You watched them while you're working out, didn't you? Exercise bike. Watching them. Hoping other people don't see those scenes at the gym where the people are like taking off the dressing robe and they've got their underwear on to compare their bodies, right? You're like, oh, I'm not looking at anything bad, you know. I know. I've been there. Kellogg was into some stuff. Didn't he help get circumcision off? Yeah, so there we are talking about circumcision again. So it's very unfortunate, very unfortunate. For any of you that have children, you know, if your child decides that they want to undergo that treatment, let them do it on their own as an adult. Cornflakes don't work, right? And I think that's the thing to remember, is that this stuff doesn't actually do that. But again, that's a belief. Okay. So we'll go through just to kind of hear what this pastor has to say.
That's his realm.
Take it off. Take it off. Take it off. There we go.
There's a part of me that starts wondering if exorcism is the new Reiki or laughing therapy, something harmless that helps relieve stress. But I feel like some in the room might not be in a good place mentally and emotionally. When I ask Jay about this, he says it's their suffering that's made them vulnerable.
There's multiple doors that people can open up to evil spirits, such as participating in witchcraft, delving into the occult, participating in self-harm, cutting, suicidal tendencies, being a victim of abuse and trauma.
I asked Jay if
That I thought was pretty awful. So not only, because they had to kind of open that up, didn't they? Because not everybody who's experiencing this stuff, a lot of them, again, are very faithful people, like very religious people. They're not going to dabble in the occult or witchcraft or that kind of thing. These are people that don't have those issues. So they say, well, what else can open you up to it? Suicidal tendencies. That's not something you chose, right? If I choose to learn more about the writings of Aleister Crowley, that's a conscious decision that I'm making. And you can say, yeah, you opened yourself up to demonic possession. And if I were of that belief, okay, fine, I would say that. But to be afflicted with suicidal tendencies, that is not something that you chose. You don't ever consciously make that decision. And it's the same thing. They said being a victim of abuse. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being a victim of abuse? And when you talk about these hardships, which is basically PTSD, somebody convinces you this is demonic possession, that it's your fault for not recognizing that and getting an exorcism. So now you know, you go get the exorcism, cool, and of course it didn't fix your PTSD. So when another trigger happens, you are reliving that trauma, and what now? On top of this trauma that I'm having to deal with, I also have to recognize this now, because you've been taught it's my fault because I didn't do XYZ the right way. I wasn't faithful enough. So maybe you attended the exorcism and you went back to church for a couple months, and then you decided, oh, you know, you're really busy, you got work to do on Sundays because of some job you have, so you kind of don't go anymore, and so you go to church less, and then you have another trigger event, you have another trauma reliving event, and you're going to blame the fact that you stopped going to church as frequently. You're going to say it's my fault that I'm experiencing PTSD. That's where this becomes damaging. Like I said, when I was experiencing my body going through these really terrible changes because of now this chronic pain that's never going to go away, I was still very faithful. I was still very religious. And this idea that it's my fault, I honestly had those feelings. This isn't something that I'm saying, yeah, these people are harmful, let's dismiss it, and gosh, these people are just being, you know, they're too stupid and whatever. I went through that. I know what that's like to really get, like when they have the altar call at church, you go up there with your cane, you get on your face, and you are praying as hard as you can with tears and snot coming out of all your face orifices. Because why is God letting this happen? How come these demons aren't being taken out of me? I just want to go back to normal. Why is this happening? And then you start wondering, well, God doesn't give you anything more than you can bear. I didn't do this stuff. I'm faithful, blah, blah. So maybe he's trying to teach me a lesson. And that's when you start trying to pull all these disparate ideas together into some sort of mystical educational experience from Jesus. When you see fireflies light up outside because it's a summer night in a southern state in the United States, and you close your eyes and say, God, please show me a sign that you're there, and you open your eyes and you see one firefly light up after 45 seconds. Boom! That's God showing you that he's there. That's an example of something that actually happened in my life. I'm not just making this up. Okay? That's the stuff that it makes you. Once I had to accept this is a physiological thing, has nothing to do with anything else. There's no message to learn here. Then I could start figuring it out. Then I can start getting through that. And it sucks, but now somebody that I really care about, that person is going through something that could be, it's already bad, and it could be indicative of something worse. And at least my experience can help them. It sucks that we both got to go through it, but at least that can happen. And I'm so glad that I am not deluding myself to believe I just need to pray harder, because then that would be the advice that I would be giving. Okay, so we got to be very careful with this stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Please raise your hand if you have BO. Please no, wait, don't please. Wait, please do not raise your hand. Thank you. Where did that come from? I mean, by the way, I'm a ripe individual. I walked through the community room and got busted a gut. Thanks for you're welcome, Summer. Yes, you do blame the victim. Let's see. So Nick, yeah, that's another discussion. Because I feel like we should have that discussion. I'm not sure if that could be a video discussion, maybe. But yeah, we could talk about that on the Discord for sure. It happened. That's why they wanted me to be exorcised. It's part of why I stayed with my husband, right? And it's really, really awful stuff. Awful stuff. Especially when that abuser is somebody in your home, because there's that belief that, honor thy father and thy mother. Well, what if they're abusive? Women submit to your husbands. Well, what if he's abusive? And then the opposite, the wives, or the husband being abused by his wife. They just don't talk about that. Just don't talk about that. You need to be stronger as a man and blah, blah, blah. They just don't even talk about that. So you're just any victim. It doesn't matter which person in the household you are. Any victim is unfortunately victimized. Let's see. No, you don't have to shut up, Summer. It's good to, I think it's helpful for people, because I don't think they've had I don't think everybody here has had both experiences. So I think it's helpful to know that it's not just one person's experience. Another person understands this as well. Wasn't trying to start a convo. I get that. I get that you're just remarking on it. But I think it is a conversation that's worth having, for sure. There was another section in here that I did want to touch on. Where was it? We can kind of watch this guy go through this other exorcism. Where was it? This guy was interesting, I thought. So he's a guy that he can't figure out what's wrong with him.
If you hit on names, then there's a reaction. Then we know that's the one that's in there, right? The spirit of masturbation, out in the name of Jesus. Out in the name of Jesus. Spirit of lust, out.
There's a whole list of quite obvious demons, things people often feel guilt or shame around. But then there are things you would never imagine could open the door to the devil. Wow.
Harry Potter, the greatest curse to mankind, because kids are so drawn to that. It's all witchcraft. This is how the devil is getting in.
So, as we talked about in the cafeteria club, Harry Potter is considered to be a door opener for the devil, because it's this belief that, remember, when we think about witchcraft and magic, like you and I, we might watch a movie like The Craft. I love that movie. It's very fun. But people watch it and they think this is like based on truth. And I know Jehovah's Witnesses also believe that as well, that they really believe in actual magic, like actual defies the laws of physics magic caused by demons or Satan manipulating the world around them. They really believe this. And so when you read about Harry Potter and like a witch school or whatever, I actually never have read or watched Harry Potter, but I know our church had burned a lot of those books, and this is that belief. There's also a belief, this one I wanted to talk about, and I had never remembered to bring it up. I was in the worship team. We were at a Christian camp. Anyone that's seen Jesus Camp, that's the type of stuff I absolutely attended. So again, I was the bass player. The worship teams got together. We're practicing, and we decide to just jam, right? So I start with a bass line. The guitarist goes in. The pastor, he was on the drums. He's doing this drum thing, and the singer picks up one of the lyrics from one of the songs, but then sings it to match this new song that we're doing. And we're having a good time. We're jamming out, and the pastor suddenly stops drumming, and we thought, okay, why we're stopping. And he said, guys, I'm sorry. We gotta stop. This music is too close to the music that I used to listen to before I got saved. And it's putting me in a bad place. And I was like, well, what? I thought music was bad because of the lyrics, or the singers or the band did something satanic, and that's why we shouldn't listen to certain music, right? The idea that we are praising God, we are singing with lyrics that praise God, but because the tune was that it's unacceptable. And then of course we all felt guilty, right? All of it. It wasn't like we looked at the pastor like, oh, come on, man, we're just having fun. None of us did that, because he's the adult, we're the teenagers, and we all are supposed to be good Christians, right? We're the worship team, we're all supposed to be good Christians. And we just kind of like looked at each other and looked away. Like, we felt so bad that are we that worldly and evil that even when we think we're worshiping God, we're actually worshiping Satan? This is the kind of stuff that Pentecostal Christianity makes you question reality. It really does. Yeah. Let's see. Love the craft. I knew you would, Summer. Let's see. I'm playing the Harry Potter video game while listening to this stream. Well, I don't know, something about some joke about extra possession. There's some Protestants who think Lord of the Rings is also a doorway to the devil. Yes. I kid you not, these people don't even know that Lord of the Rings is a Christian allegory. Yes, because I had to explain that. Yeah, I had to explain that to people. Lord of the Rings came out, 2002? Yeah, I was still super Christian. And it was this idea, it says Lord in there, and blah. I'm like, no, it was written as this analogy, like this was, or not analogy, an allegory of, the Christianity and like blah, blah, blah. And that was the only reason it was quasi okay. But like a couple of my school friends, they were playing Diablo, and I liked games, I thought it was fun. My mom didn't like Diablo because it's the devil. I'm like, yeah, but you try to kill the devil. Like, this isn't like you become the devil and you play the devil and you're like killing demons and stuff. How is this demonic? And that was one of the problems that I had, and I think that's a lot of the reasons why with cults they try to control your information. Like for Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, you're only supposed to go to the Jehovah's Witness website. For Pentecostals, they only want you to go to good and godly sites. Try to stay off of any website where something could lead you astray, like how people post. I think Instagram was after my time as a Christian, but they would talk about how, I'm assuming that they would probably say something like, well, be careful, you shouldn't go on Instagram because there are people posting all kinds of very lewd pictures that could get you to think, lustful thoughts, and that would lead you astray. Or they're posting stuff about Satan or witchcraft or something, and that could lead you astray. So you should just better not do it. The problem is that if you do it, you realize it's actually not as bad as they're making it out to be, So if I had never been exposed to that game and I heard the title, I would have just defaulted to what my friends or what my church had believed, because I was there and I was watching them play, and I was like, well, what game is this? And they said, oh, it's called Diablo. Oh, okay. To me, it wasn't, it was, I saw that it wasn't like a demonic game. It was just you going through it was just an RPG, So it's to hear that later, that, oh, that it is demonic. No, it's not. Same thing with, Dungeons and Dragons. Once you learn it and then you realize that other people think it's demonic and that they think it's witchcraft, it's like, no, it's not. If you just took 2 minutes to, well, it's a little bit longer. Uh-oh, sorry. Looks like my fingers started oozing again. Gandalf is Jesus, by the way. Yes, that's what I had heard, right? Let's see. We don't say that name here, Signostic, the Silmarillion. There's just a kind of a running joke that I can't pronounce it. Let's see. Rock Devil Rock. Ralph Man himself dressed up as Satan. Yeah. Yusuf, you said, wait, what? I'm not sure what that was to. There's a bit of a delay, so if you could explain that, yeah. Let's see. My religious aunt used to say everything was demonic. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, you name it. Yes, Pokemon was demonic, because the Pokemon could undergo evolution, and evolution is a lie from Satan. So that's why it was demonic. Also, it was from Japan, and Japan is not Christian. They believe in that nature religion, and that's witchcraft. That's what we were told. Return of the King is a pretty ham-fisted metaphor for Return of Christ the King in Revelations. Okay. Diablo's very good. Very difficult, right? Yeah, I heard, I've seen Diablo 4. I heard that was coming out, and then this whole thing about pandemic had happened, so I'm not sure, but I'm excited for it when it does come out. Silmarillion. Or is it Silmarillion? Which one is it? Speaking of D&D, I found the Thieves' Handbook in the garbage. Oh, that's a sign right there, right? There is another bit here that I wanted to touch on. Where is this person? There we are. Let's see. So this was about a woman who was killed. These people were prosecuted. But we're going to talk about this girl here. So let's go ahead and let me try to slow it down a little bit. Again, we're speeding it up just so we're going to try to get around like the copyright thing. I think we can just play this, but I don't know. There's no music, so.
Some of those involved. When she was a kid, Linda's parents were part of a fringe Pentecostal ministry that would meet in people's houses.
Nice being bicycle. Yep. My parents told me that I had always been a bad child. I had screamed all my life, that I had rejected my brother, that I had... I'm sorry, I find this really hard. They told me that I was demon-possessed. They also told me that I was cursed by a witch.
There were visits to doctors and psychologists, but ultimately Linda's parents turned to their faith for a solution to her bad behaviour.
Now I'm going to stop this here. We're going to listen to it again. But if it was difficult to hear, basically around 2 or so years old, the parents are going to say that she was a normal baby, then suddenly changed. So they thought she was demon-possessed, cursed by a witch. And it says that the family had taken her to doctors and mental health professionals, but ultimately they turned to their faith. this happens, and this doesn't mean that the doctors were unable to find anything. Unfortunately, there is a belief that because of demons and angels being the world behind the world that is believed in by some of these cults, there is a belief that if you go to a doctor and the doctor tells you something, you reject it. You kind of go to the doctor to be told there's nothing wrong, so it will justify your belief that, yeah, I'm right. It was, it's demonic possession. So what happens is that you're the family, you've got this kid, you have already decided this kid is possessed by demons, but some outsider is putting pressure on you. It could be a school, it could be family, like outside family members that don't have the same religious beliefs, and they're putting pressure on you. Just take the kid to a therapist or take the kid to a medical doctor. Just get them cleared out first. I think this could be this kind of problem, or this could be this kind of problem. There's no need to let your child suffer. Just take them. And out of spite, they bring the child to a medical doctor. No matter what the doctor says, they're going to just still believe that it's demonic possession. That's what happens. I was having issues in school, or issues while I was still in school. I wanted to see a therapist or something just to see, is there anything going on? I knew if I reported something to the school, like if I said certain keywords to a counselor, then they would have to tell my parents, and my parents would be legally obligated to take me to see a psychologist. So I did that. My mom would not tell me the proper diagnosis. She had made this comment about, well, I couldn't talk to the doctor after that, and I was supposed to come back and see them, and the doctor I think had wanted to start me on some medication just to see if it was going to help. My mom just said no, and I just remember being back in the car and saying, well, what did she say? And my mom said, well, the doctor said, I'm an atheist, but even though I'm an atheist, it's obvious that your daughter is undergoing a spiritual attack. And as a kid who believed in this stuff, I totally believed her. Only as an adult, much later, I realized, no, no one's going to say that, especially as an atheist. No one's going to say that as an atheist, right? How is that your professional medical opinion? And I had found out later what was actually discussed. And it had nothing to do with that, right? So it was unfortunate, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So when I say this, I'm not like making this up or saying this could, possibly be within the realm of reality. Like, this is the type of thing that happens when you've decided already that the world is angels and demons, and you've already decided that your kid is possessed. Nothing that anybody tells you is going to go through it. So notice though that they said they saw doctors and psychologists, but ultimately decided to go with their faith. They don't say what they were diagnosed with, right? They don't say what treatment they went through. They just say they saw them and then decided to go with their religious belief anyway. So let's go ahead and keep watching.
My memories of going through deliverance or exorcisms began as early as maybe 10 years old. The leaders of the church, I would go to their house and they would take me into their lounge room. I would sit there for up to a whole day whilst they would lay their hands on me and cast demons out of me. They would have a bucket in front of me and they would tell me to cough, spit, vomit. So I would comply by coughing when they asked me to cough, spit. I could never actually bring myself to vomit. I'd try and give them the best kind of show in order to just make it stop. I think the worst part for me was when they'd actually say the name of the demon and it would feel like it was contagious. It made me feel like I had a contagious disease.
As it turns out, there was another, more mundane reason for Linda's behaviour as a child.
A few years ago I was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. Most people would probably be upset to be diagnosed with epilepsy, but I was kind of relieved. I could have been having seizures where my behaviour was a bit unusual, saying unusual things, rambling.
Linda no longer has a relationship with her parents.
I don't know how you can have a relationship with somebody who believes that you're intrinsically flawed. I need to see myself as a person who is intrinsically good.
All right. So she had temporal lobe epilepsy. And again, this started when she was 2. If her parents had taken her for medical treatment and followed up on it and actually were serious about it and only used their faith as a last resort, this would have already been diagnosed and treated. So she was going through this her whole life without treatment and being seen as this person. You know, it's one thing to be a 2-year-old child cursed by a witch, which is how they sort of believed it. But as she gets older, it becomes her responsibility to have enough faith to, get rid of this curse, get rid of this demon. And if she can't, now that's a failing for her. She has failed. And that's what she's saying for why she can't really have a relationship with her family at this point, because how could you have a relationship with someone who thinks that you're intrinsically bad? And I would say this is maybe good information for anyone who is watching this that is religious and says stuff like, well, I don't hate atheists or I don't hate LGBT people, but I do think that you're going to go against God and that you're going to go to hell when you die. That's not my choice, but that's how it is. And that's why it's offensive. It's not offensive because the person that you're saying it to necessarily believes in hell. It's because they say, well, how could you find it offensive? You don't actually believe in hell. That's not what it is. It's that you're saying you are deserving, inherently deserving of eternal torture just because of who you are. That's what they're saying. And so for her to interact with her parents, who I guess do not accept the fact that she has epilepsy, and I can kind of understand that, not only from their faith, but imagine hearing that as parents. Now their daughter doesn't have to go through this. They see that she's not having any of these episodes anymore, or that she's having fewer of them, that the medication is helping, how to treat it is helping. All of this is helping her have fewer attacks. And for them to think this whole time, our child could have had a completely different life. Our family life could have been completely different if only we didn't have this belief and we just would have taken the doctor's recommendation seriously the first time. I can definitely see how the parents would have a lot of mental block with that, to have to come to terms with the fact that they ruined their daughter's childhood. They talked about her in relation to her brother, so apparently there's at least one other child who also had problems in their childhood because of this interaction. All the stress that they had as a family, all the wasted hours undergoing exorcisms, just lost days. I'm sure that they've had problems where they couldn't have gone on family vacations because of this, that they had to interrupt holidays and stuff because of this. All of this stuff could have just been addressed if they only would have taken this seriously. And that's when it creates that really hard cognitive dissonance. And so unfortunately, it seems like they've gone to the part of, no, that's not true. It's just a trick of Satan. And that's where it seems like they would have landed, if that's the relationship they have. Hopefully in the future, they will come to terms with the fact that their religious belief damaged their family, damaged their daughter, damaged their son. Hopefully they'll come to terms with that. But as it stands, just based on this, it seems like they had that really strong cognitive dissonance and decided to default to, well, if this appears to be the answer and it's against my faith, it must be a trick of Satan. So epilepsy isn't true. These medications are just another type of magic and demon stuff, that it really is actual demonic possession, but the demons are pretending to go away when they take the medication to trick our daughter away from Christ, certainly Satan has won in this case. Like I will bet money that those are the interactions that they have. Let's see. How sad. A baby, yeah. A baby. Good old-fashioned disciplinary school. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about corporal punishment? If so, very, very against that. That doesn't help. But again, this was a child who had epilepsy. You know, that's the other problem with I would say corporal punishment is very on par with religious faith. Do you know what I mean? Instead of actually treating the actual problem, you just believe that if you keep hitting the person over the head, figuratively or literally, that the behavior just corrects itself. It just doesn't. So you would be, in this case, if that's what we're talking about, you would be in favor of beating this child for having epileptic attacks. That's not going to put you in any better of a situation than what the parents did here. There's a demon inside you that speaks Korean. Obyung, did you hear that? Demon. That's why you're speaking Korean instead of Jesus' language of English. They believe in the power of words. Yes. It's hard to get my mom to tell me what her doctor says. So she says that I have X, but I don't claim it. It's that kind of thing, right? That's so unprofessional. I consider myself an atheist, but I don't believe in God, but I do believe there's an underlying spiritual component in the universe. Right, but something like that is nothing you would ever say. Especially after one event, you know, or one meeting with the patient, right? Right, so you said, wait, never mind, don't send your kid to disciplinary school for having epilepsy. I mean, boarding school, not talking about corporal punishment. Okay. Yeah, a lot of ADHD get the short end of the stick on this issue as well. Yeah, again, so that's the problem, though, is that without getting to the root of the matter, it's not going to fix it, you know. And for things like behavioral stuff, for example, I had a student who had a very, very oppressive home life, and she was not doing very well in school. Her mother continued to be more and more disciplinary against her. Stuff like removing her door. Any money that she had, her mom would take it away from her, so that way she wouldn't have any. And remember, this is a student who I think at the time was legally an adult. I think they were held back, so they were legally an adult, living with their parents still, and the mother would exert that much, I guess, power. Believing that the more strict she was, somehow her daughter would fall in line. And her daughter, through, you know, understanding and talks and stuff with her, got to the point where she realized, I can get away from my mom as long as I do well in school. If I do well in school, I can get into a good college and never have to ever come back. And that's the kind of stuff that it does. It doesn't, it might look like to her mother, see, the stricter I got, now my daughter's doing well in school. She thinks that's what's going on. In reality, the stricter she became, her daughter thought, I must do well in school so I never, ever, ever have to live at home ever again, and I could just cut my mother out of my life completely. The mom had no idea that was the plan. So I, you know, it's been a few years. I hope that student's doing well. Yeah, just, that's what it does. It's, you know, we just because you produced a child doesn't mean you know how to rear a child. And so it's very good for people to not, it's the same idea with like anti-vaccine and stuff, you know, this concept of the parent knows best. You just don't. You still have to learn, how do I care for another human being and raise them in a way that will produce a good human being, you know, at the end of this childhood and adolescent period. You know, how can I set my child up for success? And that's not something that comes innately, especially if you had a bad childhood yourself. And that's another kind of issue, yeah. But I think we're getting a bit off the topic. So being Korean is almost equal to God, not bad yet. Let's see. Do I want kids? Absolutely not. No. Let's see. I don't know who MC or Hero are. Let's see. This is true, but the parents think that they know more than they do. Right. And then try to teach other parents how they should parent. It's ridiculous. Yes. I think in the case of like exorcism and stuff, that is probably the blind leading the blind in that case. It's people who don't understand enough about the human condition, trying to pretend that they do, convincing other people to let them do those things to their kids. And that's terrible. There's StarCraft 2 players. Gotcha. I was just a screw up. I was sent to Jesuit school and became disciplined. That's going to be unpopular in this chat, but it's true. I don't know why it would be unpopular in this chat. That can happen. There are people that they learn the benefits of self-sufficiency. This happened when I was in the Marines. There were people that just understood through the discipline. This is why following the rules makes sense, right? We're talking though about people that their parents, even in your case, you should have been cleared psychologically and medically first before being sent off. In your case, it just happened to work, but hopefully you were cleared. Like, your child doesn't have any mental health problems. Your child doesn't have any brain disorders. Your child's just being a jerk. Send them off to this like disciplinary school where they gotta scrub stuff and do push-ups and stuff. Okay, but the thing is that we have to first rule it out, right? We have to first rule it out. It's good for many people. Doubt the religiosity makes much of a difference. Yeah, as long as they're teaching you, reality instead of saying that the earth was made 6,000 years ago or something. You would probably, someone says you would probably make a good mother. Think about it. So I would really caution you against making statements like that. I really, really would. In my case, I'm not offended by it, but there are people that are. I would really caution you against that because I have a laundry list of all the reasons that I physically cannot be a mother. In addition to just personal, preference and stuff. So to suggest, well, I think watching you sometimes on this thing that you should, like, I've had taxi drivers and stuff try to tell me, well, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? You're almost 40. When are you going to have kids? And I'm just like, I've got medical problems. Oh, sorry. Then that's what they say. Oh, sorry. Like, I have to justify it. There are people that have had, like, hysterectomies and stuff that really did want kids. And they just have to say, you know what, just not having kids, or they have to say it as a choice or something because they don't want to go into their medical history. They don't want to talk about how many miscarriages and stuff that they've had, or that one time that they almost were able to give birth, but their uterine lining or their uterus, had disconnected and they almost died. And most people die in those cases. They don't want to relive that trauma just because you felt like, in passing, bringing up a serious topic. So I would really recommend against that for sure. Yeah. And again, I'm not offended by it. I'm not trying to scold you, just forcefully gently recommending not to do that, because there are a lot of those cases. And so people just say, you know what, I have to accept that I'm not going to have kids, but just to avoid getting into it, they just say, yeah, that's not for me, or that's not in my future. They kind of phrase it that way. And so people will kind of push them in that case. But for me, I just don't like kids too. That's the personality. I just don't like them. Just don't. I love teaching, but I don't teach little kids for a reason. I have considered, and still perhaps would consider, adopting or fostering a child that is at least 15 years old. I have considered that. But beyond that, just no. Yeah. Oh, good. No offense taken. Great. Makes it really mad when people ask me to get married and have kids, can't afford it. I'm mature enough for that. If anything else, it comes off as judgmental. Right. And again, it's sort of like, who am I that my DNA needs to be spread? You know, I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I got my own set of problems. I don't need to pass on this curse to my kids. You know what I mean? Infertility hurts so badly. That was a lack of faith too. Right, you know, because God said, be fruitful and multiply, but you're not multiplying, therefore there's a problem with you, you know. Let's see, she said perhaps so many times that sentence. Right. Let's see. Yeah, I don't get mad at it, but I understand why some people would. But I think too, it's also sort of a discounting kind of thing, like this idea that, you know, I'm almost 40, but just what I never gave it enough serious thought to do the thing that most people my age have already done. You know, it's like, it's almost like saying, are you too stupid to have realized the thing that everybody else realized? You know, it's almost like saying that. So it is, again, for me, just, it's hard for me to take offense to a lot of stuff. So I just kind of find it annoying, because it's like, okay, here's all the reasons that I don't want to have kids, you know, and so I have to go through that laundry list. And I do it on purpose just to, like, get the person to understand. No. And then once they say, like I say, well, I've got these medical problems, and they say, oh, okay. And then I just don't stop. I keep going into it, because they should know this is not casual conversation for some taxi driver to have with me on my way to, you know, my residence. Like, this is not, you don't know who I am. What are you even asking that for? But for them, well, it's normal conversation. It's polite conversation. And I'm the type of person that I don't accept, well, that's just the way we do it. I don't accept that as a justification. So if somebody says, well, it's just a normal question, or it's just something, I don't accept that as a justification. So I guess it should be no surprise, some of the stuff we've said here, that just being told something by a pastor, I didn't accept that as a justification. Yeah. If you have bad hair, Koreans will say, what happened to your hair? Right. Or if you're not wearing makeup, I don't know if this happens to you, Obyung, but if you're not wearing makeup, they'll say, well, why do you know, are you sick? Like, nope. And that's kind of stays with you, right? Like, do I look that bad? That if I'm not wearing makeup, that you're just going to ask if I'm sick? And they're like, but it's not just that, they kind of treat you like that. They almost don't accept it. Like, no, I'm just not wearing makeup. Why? I mean, is it that big of a deal? You know? So Koreans are very blunt. They're not being rude. They're just genuinely asking. But I think that they might want to ask themselves, well, maybe I don't mean this to be rude, but is it rude? You know, is it rude? Think you're a great teacher and that you would impart the right things into a child. No one is perfect. I don't think you have to be. Right. Yeah, I love teaching. I love it. But just one of the, like, I had maybe like a 1%, maybe I might want kids. I guess teaching will help me see that. And then no. Like, I love teaching, but not the kids. And I just remember somebody saying, yeah, but it's different when they're your own. I'm like, yeah, I can't send them away from me after 40 minutes. I gotta go home with them. You know, that's And then a friend of mine had left me with one of her kids in an open area and went off to, I guess, change her baby's diaper. And I didn't know, so I turned around to talk to her, and she was gone. And then I turn around, and her son had taken off. Just boom, just gone. And he was like 2. He's not going to listen to me. I'm practically a stranger. And so I'm having to run after this kid, just running after this kid. Running is not good for me, but I can't let a 2-year-old get lost in a public place. So I'm running after this kid, running. My friend gets back. To me, it felt like a year, but I guess she was only gone for like 10 minutes. She comes back, and I was just like, oh my gosh, there you are, where'd you go? And I had to go change his diaper. I thought you heard me when I told you. I said, I didn't, but he's here. okay. And she's like, all right, let's go get lunch. We have to meet up with somebody, then we're going to go grab lunch. So we had met up with the person, and by then all of my muscles had started to seize up. And I was just like, you know what? Love you. I have to take a rain check. You guys have a good lunch. I have to go home. I can't walk. Like, I was like, you know, robotic, like C-3PO on, you know, walking my C-3PO butt home. And I just was like, medicine, relax. You know, you get to the point where you can't even stretch. And that was just after like 10 minutes chasing a kid. And I was just thinking, I am like, this is one of the reasons I just cannot have I just can't have kids. So yeah, that was an ouch. That was an ouch. I've given up on the wife and kids plan for the time being. My now ex-fiance had commitment issues, wasn't emotionally able to be in a relationship, broke my heart. It's a shame she never got therapy. I'm going to join the army and just do my own thing for a while. I feel like a lot of relationships fail because of unresolved issues, for sure. If you got any questions on like military stuff, I wasn't in the army because I was able to do the Marines, but I guess I can't brag about that now because I can't even chase a 2-year-old for 10 minutes. But if you have any questions about like boot camp or military life that are kind of general, then yeah, definitely send me a DM on Discord for sure. Let's see, but if you don't feel good, Koreans will say go see a doctor because seeing a doctor is not a big deal. Right, and that happens here too, not just Koreans, but for the other foreigners that have been here for a long time. Like if I've got a migraine, I'm leaving my class like to go puke and then come back. It's like, why don't you go see a doctor? I'm just like, for what? This is a chronic condition. Chronic conditions, you don't... they're not emergency. But I have to go to the ER because it's a last minute thing. Go in, and then what? Wait for 3 hours because it's not an emergency. I'm screaming in pain in my head because, oh my goodness. And then eventually the doctor sees me and the doctor says, oh... do you have any kind of... No. They're migraines. I have chronic migraines. They're migraines. Oh, you got migraines. Yeah. It do be like that sometimes. And then maybe the medication that they can give me a shot of might work. And then I go home. So I just paid money, lost money not being at work, went home, got to do more work tomorrow at work to make up for the work I didn't do today. And I'm not in any better shape, you know. And so I told my coworkers, I'm like, if I went to the doctor every time I had a migraine, I miss like 66% of the days, you know. Let's see. I also hate it when people say, I said the same thing when I was 18. You'll change your mind one day. Right. Yeah. Like, okay. Almost 40. And I always tell them, well, I will adopt if I really, really feel that way. But I think foster care might be better for me. The whole experience sounds traumatic. I mean, I don't know if I would say a traumatic, but I would say like definitely a one-time experience. Just that's the one time we're doing it. I mean, this was like, I couldn't do anything for the rest of the weekend. Not even just the rest of the day or the rest of the hour, the rest of the weekend. And when you're getting those types of like muscle seize up, triggering migraines, these are like the migraines where you're so dizzy, it feels like you're like really, really drunk in a severe earthquake. Everything feels like it's spinning around and lights hurt you and sound hurts you and it's just, there's nothing, like my whole weekend was wasted because of that. And again, it's not my friend's fault. I don't think she understood that. I don't think she expected her son to behave that way. I think like with parents, there's this idea that when my kids on better behavior when they're around strangers than they are around me. They kind of are, they're used to me. And so if I leave my kid with my friend, they're probably going to behave better. So I don't think she anticipated, like, I don't blame her for it. It's not her fault. But it was just like that. My weekend was gone because of that, you know, and that's, imagine having to deal with that. And then the idea of like being pregnant, which grosses me out, first of all, but just like to have that much hormonal changes and weight changes that presses on and pulls on all these different nerves and stuff. And then how many migraines is that going to trigger? And now I can't take my medication. And the migraines are a secondary condition to a primary issue. There's no way. There's no way I could just physically endure it. There's just not, just can't. So that's why I thought, well, maybe foster a teenager. That might be a thing later on for me to do, maybe in 10 years. So we'll see. Yeah, definitely hit me up if you got questions with that, Nick. Just turned 25. I'm old to some and a baby to others. Right. Dealing with a pregnant wife can also be a hassle depending on her harmony shifts. I think you mean hormone shifts. Not trying to be sexist. I don't think so. I think that pregnancy hormones are very difficult to deal with. That's, again, one of the reasons I don't think I could handle it. Yeah. Foster a mischief of rabbit babies. Absolutely. So before we do end, I did want to touch on a couple of things. I know we definitely got off topic, which is fine. That's the nature of live streams. I did ask G-Man to come with some questions. G-Man unfortunately could not join us. So he just wanted to know, in my opinion, my experience, just some questions. So who came up with the concept of exorcism, Jesus or the Catholic Church? I would also like to know your point of view when you see people acting like they got a demon living inside of them. Do you believe the Catholic Church did exorcisms for show? Even better, did the Catholic Church know in advance if it was real or not? From a secular position, what sickness or mental illness do you think they were suffering from during the exorcism? So I wanted just to kind of read through those because I can kind of answer all of them nebulously. So I think that the concept of exorcism is from the Bible, as in demons inhabiting people or things. But the whole, what is it called? The Catholic rite of exorcism, the Roman ritual. That, of course, is a Catholic thing. So this idea that there's certain prayers to say, they must be said in Latin, blah, 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 definitely the Catholic Church. I think the Catholic Church did them for show in the past, not today. Today, they, again, as we talked about in the beginning of this video, they really don't want that kind of attention. But I think they did it in the past, not just for a show, just for entertainment, not like that, but just to show, look at this person is afflicted and we have the solution. This is why everybody else should keep coming to church. This is one of the reasons that we had that burning of the witches problem. Witchcraft in the belief system of Christianity is like magic that is actually rooted in demonic possession or demonic influence. Actual witchcraft, quote unquote, is just studying stuff that other people don't study in a way that can positively or negatively affect them. This would be like understanding how to read somebody. Like there's different there's body language, like understanding body language. But before we understood that was even a thing, before we understood the idea of psychology, that's what these witches, quote unquote, were doing. They were understanding people and understanding words that they could say that could really negatively affect someone or give them motivation. They were also studying things like, oh, if I put this herb, that will help somebody if they have a sickness, like a cough or vomiting or something. And this is where it becomes a rival for the church. If I'm sick and I go to church and I do all the things the priest tells me to do and I don't get better, and I'm coughing and I've been having this cough, really bad cough, it's hard for me to talk, and a friend of mine says, boy, you've been really suffering with that. Yeah, I keep going to church, but nothing's happening. I don't know what's going on. My friend can say, on the way to the next town, that weird house? There's a little lady that lives there and she makes this teas and stuff. I've heard she helps with people in your situation. I went to her one time. She'll fix you right up. I go there, I drink the tea like she says for 3 days, whatever. My cough is gone. Next time that I'm sick, who am I going to see? The priest or the little old lady? Who's going to get my money? The priest or the little old lady. And that's where this problem became, well, it's a little old lady learning about herbs and stuff, and she cured someone magically, as if by magic, because we don't understand how this works, therefore it must be magic, right? So that's why they ended up attacking a lot of these witches, was just a money thing. So I think that's why they did them for show, just to say, hey, we're the Catholic Church and we have this power. You should keep coming to church, keep giving us your money. I don't think that they thought it was not real. I don't know if they had a reason to. I would wager that maybe a few people at that time perhaps were skeptical enough to understand maybe there's something else. Like, I think that they would have believed in demons and that demons can possess people, but perhaps there might have been a few of them that were skeptical to think, let's try to rule stuff out first, and then if we can't rule it out, we can blame demons. Now, of course, they didn't have a lot of the diagnostic abilities that we have today, so that would have been very limited, but I think that those people probably existed at that time. What sickness or mental illness do we think is suffering from during the exorcism? So I think we talked about that pretty thoroughly here, that it could be not necessarily a sickness or mental illness, but if it is, it could be something like schizophrenia. It could be something like the temporal lobe epilepsy that we talked about or that the video showed, or just that following the crowd. This is just part of my beliefs. I was just indoctrinated that way. Yeah. But when you see people acting like they have a demon living in them, I think if they're not like a scam artist, I think it's that stuff we mentioned earlier, where it's this concept of, it's not me, it's the demon, right? I'm not the one doing these bad things. It's that I'm possessed by demons. Yeah. Let's see. I'm 25 as well. I feel like death is around the corner personally. Well, yeah. Then I just would recommend to stay as healthy as you can. See a doctor when you need to. Don't get COVID, because you're probably not going to die from it, but you might. The big risk for people in this age group is not so much death, but what is it? Sorry. You can tell I'm having more pain, maybe. I'm losing my train of thought. Long-term medical effects. Like respiratory stuff, yeah. So you'd have like the people that had SARS-1 back in like 2003, 18 years later, they are still suffering from SARS-like symptoms. So that's the stuff you want to stay away from. It's one of the reasons I haven't gotten, we talked about Schrodinger's virus and stuff earlier. Yeah, Summer, you and I are grandmas. That's okay. You know what? We're just leveling up. Let's see. All of us have a reason to live life to the fullest. That's true. What would psychiatry say about exorcism? That the neurons are messed up? No, so the stuff that I've been talking about is actually, a lot of it comes from the studies of like psychology. In terms of psychiatry, I would say it would be a mental illness that should be treated with medication, but had been misunderstood as demonic possession. So in terms of like psychiatry specifically, that's probably what they're thinking of. Yeah. Age is just a number. I don't know. I guess it can be, but I like to think of it as, like, I started telling people stuff about back in the day. And so I remember there was a Tumblr post that somebody was asking about, they wanted to know what people's reaction was during, sorry, having a weird, it feels like there's bubbles popping in my skull. It's this very strange feeling. They wanted to know what it was like during 9/11 for people that actually lived through it and were old enough to remember it. And so I was talking about this, and I was talking about the Abu Ghraib controversy and stuff, and just talking about what was going on at the time. And I was like, aha, I'm that person now. I'm the keeper of the stories. And I don't know, I like that idea. So it's kind of fun to to have that. So I would say, age is not, wisdom does not come with age. I would say wisdom comes with experience, but the older you are, the higher chance of having different experiences. Yeah. We will all reach a point where we don't have many moments in life left. Sad truth. Well, that's the thing. Any of those, we don't know. Nobody woke up that day and thought, most people don't wake up and say, today's the day that I'm going to die. Right? None of us know. That's such a weird feeling. Age is just a number. The higher it is, the worse state your body's in. Not necessarily. Some people are in very good shape as they get older. Muscle wasting a lot of times happens because we work out less, we do less. So as you guys are still getting older, make sure to do those workouts. Maybe that should be the next videos. We'll talk about just home workouts or something. I don't know if there's an interest for that. On that note, I need to lie down. Looks like it's about the time I need the second dose of the day for my medication anyway. Thank you guys for joining me. Some people peak later in life too. That's true. I showed you guys that obesity picture. I showed you again before we go. I don't mind it. I'm not bothered by it, I think. What do we got? Weight loss. There we go. Yeah, I'm not bothered by it because it's like that's what it was, And yeah. So that was me half my life. So I would say, physically, I don't know if I'm better physically. Maybe just standing or sitting as a stationary individual, perhaps healthier, except for the cancer risk and stroke risk. Whoops. That's one of the reasons I gotta be so on top of it, because obesity increases your risk of cancer, obesity increases your risk of stroke, and I'm already at that increased risk. So I feel like my speech is being affected. My hearing is definitely, something just happened. I have tinnitus, not a big deal, but just I feel like I'm falling apart like quickly, suddenly, and that's kind of the problem. Like, you'll be okay, and then suddenly it's like I tell people my body is like a rickety staircase. It does what it does, but you got to be very careful, because one step and the whole thing will just collapse. So we'll just see what you guys say. Kudzu, yeah, Kudzu is that's definitely away from the top. I don't know why you thought of that, but yeah, no. I hear it's an invasive species, but can you eat it? I forgot. I think you can eat it. Keeper of the Stories is going to be Schrodinger's Virus's first album. Can I help you write the lyrics? I'm not good with music, but I'm good with lyrics. I got one minor periodontal disease around one tooth, and you're 28. Oh, you're 28. You might... No, what is it, 30? Is that the cutoff for Army? Because you're too old for the Marines. I know that. Too old to start the Marines. I mean, there's people that are older in the Marines, but you're told to start. 57-year-old Facebook guy group. I'm doing calisthenics. Holy heck, he had a body. Nice. Yeah, physically and mentally. Take care of you, Lee. Cool. Girl has guns. I gotta show you the actual, a guns picture. You can't see him because I got my long sleeves on. Long in the tooth is a euphemism as old. That's nice. That's gross, but nice. That's good. 32 is really? That's up there. Wow. Okay. I had no idea. 32 is the cutoff for the Army. I thought it was 29, maybe. But no, 32. Damn. Not everyone hits a wall in their 20s. Yeah, I don't think you should. I think you should just keep getting better. You learn more about yourself, learn how to compensate for stuff that's going on, I would say I'm exercising in a more intelligent and effective way now, having to have dealt with my medical issues for this long, compared to when I was in my 20s and had recently been diagnosed and recently was dealing with that. I would say I'm more I'm better now. Yeah. All right, so Nick, yeah, message me on the Discord for you guys. The Discord again is, do I still have it? Is like something to paste. Yay. So message me. You can just message me directly. The DM. Just put a reminder in there. I'm not sure how much of this last portion that I'm gonna remember, especially your name. I should probably remember your name though. Yeah. Remember, she never had kudzu juice. Oh, okay. Kudzu juice. When did I say that? Did I say that here? Okay, have a great rest of your weekend. Did message you in the military and politics discussion. Cool. Did you just tag me? Just make sure you tag me if you didn't. Otherwise, adios, you guys. Bye-bye.